Hello, Tolkien geeks, and welcome back to Voice of Geekdom Live. I'm your host, Dan, and we're here today to talk about episode 7 of season 1 of The Rings of Power. And I have another extra special panel this week. Two good friends of mine who had never met before earlier today. But we've got below me, we've got Nikki from, she's one of the contributors to the Fellowship of Fans channel, who I've known for quite a long time. Some of you will know her as the voice of Melian from the Silmarillion Explained series, which was just wonderful voice work. And there's still more to come of that because I've still got the Baron and Luthien storyline to come up. So that's going to be fun. I've got some exciting castings for that as well. So people have been asking nonstop over the last couple of months, where's the Silmarillion Explained? It's going to come back when the show is done. So, but yeah, it's a great pleasure to have you on. We had the experience of meeting in person recently at the London premiere of the show as well, which was cool. Red
awesome.
Carpet, all dressed up and dolled up, and we got to see the show a couple of days early, which was fun. And we both got to meet lots of people that we'd known online for a long time in person for the first time that night. So just a great day and a lovely evening.
It was. It was. Megawannen, everyone. Megawannen.
At the bottom of your screen, we've got another good friend of mine, Mr. Stephen Stark from Here Be Dragons on YouTube. There's a channel that I've been a guest on numerous times, and we've also known each other for quite a while now, a couple of years. And it's first time on the channel, but it's a pleasure to have you on. You're also covering the show on and off as well. I think you've got another stream coming up for sometime after the finale.
Basically, yes, the Sunday after the show ends, we will be talking about it, which I believe is not this coming Sunday, but the Sunday after. And we'll be we talked about it once after the first 4 episodes. We did sort of a mid-season thing. We're on hiatus this week. John just survived a hurricane and a personal loss in his family. And I am going through a little bit of my own family drama. So we're taking the weekend off. So no stream tomorrow on Here Be Dragons, but we'll be back the week after to talk about this very show.
Awesome. I'm happy to come on as well if you want me to as well for that. I'm pretty busy at the moment, but
I can imagine. And my time slot's not always the best, it's either that or it's perfect. Some people will be streaming about House of the Dragon that weekend. I'm sure there's just no way around it. And if that's what you're into, please go watch that. But we'll be talking about Rings of Power next week.
Cool. And so it's great to have you both on for this as well. I teased this last week. I spoke about this last week on the stream. We are going to be doing some content all together along with Chase, who was on the show a few weeks back for, I think, episode 4, possibly. And so we're going to be doing a playthrough of the One Ring RPG starter set. And the two of you are 2 of my 3 players. So it's going to be really, really fun. Hopefully we can start filming that in a few weeks, and people can expect that out in around about a month potentially.
I said it earlier, the hardest thing with any tabletop RPG is just getting the time to get 4 humans to align their schedules.
Yeah, it's a cliche, but unfortunately it is difficult to get everybody together for these games sometimes. But yeah, we're all lovers of tabletop gaming, and it's going to be fun to play through that because it's a really exciting, interesting system, and a lot of potential for interesting storytelling. So I'm looking forward to sort of sharing my thoughts on that game with people as well as just losing myself in Middle Earth, which is something I always love doing. But yeah, it's great to have you both on. Before we get started, I'll just sort of sum up the episode, I suppose. So this week we obviously got the aftermath of the big explosion of Mount Doom that we saw at the end of last week. We caught up with the Númenóreans, and we see Galadriel in the first scene, and she wakes up and rescues Theo, and they kind of scramble to pick up the pieces after the catastrophic end of the last episode. We get more Harfoots in this episode as well, and we get really quite probably the biggest plot development that we've got in that whole storyline thus far. It's been one of the slower storylines. And then, of course, we've got Elrond and Durin dealing with the mithril plot as well, which is kind of feels like setup still at the moment. It's quite a contentious storyline, and I've got a lot of things to say about this week's. How do you guys feel about this week's episode? I know, Nikki, you've only just recently watched it, so...
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, it was one of the weaker ones. Like I'm always the positive one, the one that's like, yes, everything is awesome all the time, and I love it. But it felt sort of like an intermission to me. There wasn't really that much that was happening that really stuck with me or impressed me in any way. Always enjoy the dwarfs and the elves. Like that storyline is just heartwarming and beautiful. But apart from that, I kind of felt like we were sort of just waiting for something to happen that didn't really, like, there was no real wow moment for me in this one. Like the episode before this was incredible, but for this one I was like, it ended too soon, but only because I felt like nothing had happened, really. But I did enjoy it. I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy it. I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, there was some really good character building moments that I did enjoy. But yeah, there wasn't a whole lot of plot development in all of the storylines. Probably the biggest plot development we got was the stuff with the Harfoots and the attack and the stranger leaving.
It was good to see the mystics in action, actually. But I felt like even that was like you were left a little bit wanting more.
I wanted some answers. It
wasn't really explained. It was just like, okay, this happened, and why? So yeah, I don't know.
This was something that I was thinking as well. This comment from here from Flixer says, feels weird when you're used to packed Game of Thrones penultimate episodes. So yeah, that's something that show did really well, was just have an explosive end to the penultimate episode and just a blockbuster episode. And then a kind of wrap up and sort of epilogue to the season afterwards, which always felt quite balanced, the way that they built things up in that show. Until the last couple of seasons, but we won't talk about that. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, I was expecting actually Mount Doom to go off in this episode, because we all knew it was going to happen from the start of the season. It was the most obvious kind of thing that was going to lead up to. As soon as we realized that these people lived in Mordor, it was like, well, that's going to blow up, isn't it? That's going to go badly.
Something's going to happen. Yeah.
So, Stephen, how about yourself? What did you think about this week's episode?
I think I disagree a little bit with you, Nikki, if I may.
You may.
Because this felt like, okay, our heroes just got dealt a pretty serious blow, and I'll talk about my difficulties with certain aspects of the episode, because they do exist. But I think overall, this felt like the deep breath before the last jump. So I feel like it's building anticipation for what's next week. Yes, maybe some of it is a little anticlimactic in its own ways, which is probably why they showed us the Balrog at the end, because that would feel like an anticlimax without it, I think.
You might be right, yeah. That was a moment that was teasing things to come, potentially. Although, personally, I don't really want to see the fall of Khazad-dum in this show, because it's too early in the history for that.
Not in the season. Maybe in like season 4, I would be up for it. But for season 1, it seems too soon. Then again, it kind of felt like it was building up to that with the whole, like, one day we will dig. And then they showed the Balrog. So they're not saying we're going to dig now, but like one day we will dig. So they're building up to it. For me, like, yes, I love the shot of the Balrog, and finally we figured out where that shot in the trailer came from. But it still kind of felt like the whole episode a little misplaced. Like it felt like they just, okay, we need to get to the point here. We need to do this, and we need to get these people to be in the right place. Like it's like a chessboard. You need to place them in the right place for it to be canon. So it kind of felt like that's what they were doing, and they were just doing it and stirring the pot a little bit. And yes, I know they're coming up to the final episode of this season before we're going to get new stuff happening in season 2 and 3 and 4 and whatever. But I would have liked it to be more episodes them taking longer time to tell the story, and then it just feels sort of rushed and sort of not fully, I don't know, not fully satisfying for me, at least.
Sure. All right. So let's get into the episode and go scene by scene roughly.
Sure.
Yes.
So I'm going to share my screenshots. So we don't have to talk about every shot, but we start off here. Actually, before we get going, I should say to the chat as well, thank you all for showing up. As I always like to start the chat, let me know where you're watching from this evening or this morning or this afternoon or whatever time it might be for you. Always like to see where people are watching from. If you've been watching previous episodes, you'll know this. So yeah, it's good to see you all. We've got Alison, my mod, Kugelblitz, who always has good comments. We've got Luke Elkins, his name I don't recognize, but good to see you. Flixer, Drew Boogie, which is one of my favorite names to say. Yeah, great to see everybody. Rico DeVries. Is that a Witcher reference? That's a Witcher character, isn't it? DeVries, I think. Mr. Herby Dragons in the chat.
That would be me. Hi.
Danny, one of my other mods. Kate, another one of my mods. Yeah, good to see you all. And as I say, let us know where you're watching from. Oh, we've got East Midlands in the house. Lovely. Another Englishman. Oh, it's a Dutch name. Okay, understood. All right. Great. All right. So, yeah. So before we get going, I just want to say we'll talk amongst ourselves, and we'll have the back and forth and the banter and the analysis will be forthcoming, and we'll try to keep up with the chat as much as possible. But if anybody has any particular points they want to share or theories that they want us to discuss, then the super chat function is available, and that's a great way to support the channel. Obviously, this is a small channel. I'm a relatively small creator, and I'm trying to make it big time and be able to do this full time one day. So anything that goes into the channel does go towards future production and so on. So something to bear in mind. I'm trying to get a long-term editor for my lore content on board with the channel in the future. So
I know an editor.
I know you do. Yes, that's something that we're trying to do here, and hopefully I'll be able to bring content more regularly in the future. But yeah, with that said, we're going to get into this first scene. So we wake up with Galadriel here after the. Go on, Stephen. You've got your hand up.
First thing.
Sure.
Okay. I have a science background. Everyone should be burned to ashes.
Yes.
Please continue.
Yeah, she wakes up looking like one of those statues in Pompeii, actually, doesn't she? Except the difference is she's alive somehow, and so is most of everybody else. But yeah, it's a powerful scene visually, but it doesn't really make the most sense. But then again, does it make the most sense?
I'll allow it.
Does it make the most sense for Frodo and Sam to be sitting on a rock at the end of The Lord of the Rings next to a lava flow, literally feet away? I don't know that it does. The Mount Doom is literally exploding then too. So, but yeah, perfect. So as I say, we join this scene, and Galadriel wakes up. We sort of focus on her eye first of all, and she wanders around. She calls out Elendil's name, and she calls out.
I like how she specifically doesn't call out Isildur's name. I was kind of waiting for the whole Isildur, kind of the nod to the whole cast it into the fire. But
no, they already did that once on the boat, though, didn't they? They had that
did.
callback early on. I think it's episode 3. We saw that already.
Yeah, it would have been cheesy to do it again. It was cheesy enough to do it once, I would say. But it's a very dramatic awakening, like we said in the predictions on Fellowship of Fans, as well as that's what we're going to start with, because sometimes they like to mix it up with, where the cliffhanger is. They're not just going to start immediately in that cliffhanger. But they did for this one, because how could they not, right? Like that,
Right.
anything else just wouldn't have made sense filmatically. So it's a I feel like they nailed the whole feeling of both, for Galadriel, utter shock and confusion and just disbelief, and feeling like, what is happening here. I also kind of saw, I feel like, a little bit of a character arch in her here in this episode. I felt like she grew, because she was so genocidal and so angry, but now she's speaking to Theo, and she's basically, as she's telling him, you need to stop fighting, we need to regroup, like we need to get away from here. You're kind of seeing her have the same realization herself, which I felt like that was the start of something within her. Maybe she realizes that, oh my god, my hatred has led us to this. Maybe she blames herself a little bit for this happening the way that it happened. So it was an interesting scene, and
a lot of that going on in this episode, particularly between these two characters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of growing. Yeah,
it does start here, but I agree. Like, and they have a lot of subtle moments where Galadriel is imparting her wisdom that she, but giving all the advice that she needs to take herself, really throughout this whole episode. And the care that she shows for this kid is not something we've seen from her either. She cares about people for sure, but she finds Theo, and once she's found him, she gets him the hell out of there. She doesn't stay to help anyone else. And I'm not saying that's a good, bad, or indifferent decision on her part, but I think it's just telling of where her mind is at. I'm going to save this child.
Yeah, but that's a question that I had, though, about this scene, is that, yeah, they leave pretty damn quickly, and they're all basically in the same tiny little town area when this happens. And they leave, and he doesn't seem to know if his mother is dead or alive. Like, they don't stay to look at anyone. And then they cut to another scene where Miriel and Isildur and all of that, and it feels like it's happening in like the same sort of area and close to each other. And then I'm like, how did they miss each other? When did this happen? Like, how is it possible that they were so close and then all of a sudden they're not? Yes, you could say the blast blew them to different areas, but the town seemed really small, so I don't know.
It's really just a small town, isn't it? There's a very few buildings.
I would say, you scatter in different directions, and then you're hiding from orcs, and you can't see, and you're having trouble breathing.
Yeah, and the confusion.
Perhaps these scenes happened at different times.
Yeah, that could be.
Well,
which also makes sense, because you get knocked out and you don't have like a time frame for how or when you get knocked out.
But that's an issue with editing, because it does appear that way.
Yeah, and then back to Galadriel and Theo, I kind of feel like she sees a little bit, because Theo has been very angry and aggressive and quick to anger himself. So maybe she sees a little bit of herself in him.
I think that's clear, definitely, from some of their dialogues later on.
Yeah.
And I think possibly like maybe some latent maternal instinct is kicking in Galadriel here as well. She's going to talk very controversially about her husband later on in the episode.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Which begs the question: is her daughter alive at this point?
And is he? Because she thinks.
He obviously is. I mean, I think that's beyond.
He's gonna have to be, otherwise, what happened to that cannon?
Yeah. I mean, this is off canon already for him to be, for him to have disappeared in the War of the Jewels already. But we'll get to that later on. But yeah, certainly there's something going on there that's changed. But I don't think he's going to be dead.
No, I don't think so.
I doubt it.
Very unlikely, I would say.
I don't want to go out of order necessarily, but since you brought it up, I actually kind of liked that. Again, I'm, as someone who is not as steeped in the legendary and is probably every other guest you've ever had on this channel. I'm just sort of like a cursory. I've read the Silmarillion. I've read Lord of the Rings. I've read The Hobbit. I've seen the Lord of the Rings movies. I watched the first Hobbit movie.
That's still plenty, though. Like that's still huge. Like,
but I have not studied it the way I've studied other fandoms. Probably the more like Star Wars and A Song of Ice and Fire and Dungeons and Dragons. But so I'm not married to any backstory here. I'm really not.
It's really good to have the perspective as well from other people coming into this. I like it.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, it's nice to have opinions from people who are coming into this a little bit kind of unsullied.
I am a connoisseur of fantasy and science fiction and all of that, genre, television and movies. And I really do enjoy this show overall. I'm going to nitpick it when I feel I should, but I really like what they've done. Even like when you name drop somebody I know, it doesn't feel like fan service. It feels like character building for her in that moment.
It's good to get a range of opinions for me as well, because when I do these streams, every time I do, I get both comments saying, "Why didn't you criticize this more?" and "This is a travesty," and "This is polluting the lore and Tolkien's vision," and so on. And then I also sometimes I get the opposite, which is, "Oh, this was far too negative, and you're nitpicking at everything and ruining the fun."
Yeah.
And so
I feel like it's good
I'm
to
trying
have
to
both
be
angles.
objective.
Yeah, all angles. Everybody should be included. This is a TV series that's designed for anyone to watch. People who haven't read any books, people who haven't even seen the movies, people who have no connection to this fandom whatsoever. The good thing about it is that it's bringing more people into the fandom. And I feel like we shouldn't gatekeep that, no matter how well adverse you are into the lore of Tolkien. And how precious this is to you. You have to remember that new people coming in, becoming fans, especially younger ones, is a big deal, and it's a good thing for the Tolkien as well.
Yeah. Anyway, we should get back to the episode at hand. So the next scene we get here is Isildur and his friend Valandil Valandil is trapped underneath the building, and he and Isildur and Miriel are attempting to free him from the collapsed roof, I think it is. And so they manage to do so, but as they do, he rolls away, and Ontamo is revealed, who I was singing his praises actually last week on Fellowship of Fans when I was guesting on there for the expert panel on the Sunday, because I really enjoyed his kind of 30-second scene that he got at the end of the episode before everything went to pot. I thought that he might end up dead actually, because of the fact that they set this up as him wanting to leave battle behind him, and he wanted to help the Southlanders and not go on the mission to go after the orcs that had gotten away, and he'd clearly seen enough of war and realized that it wasn't for him. And so it was, as soon as he said that, I thought, well, he's not going to survive, is he?
Sadly, no. And there's also one of the characters that's easiest to kill off, sadly, because he's not 100% established, and he's clearly not going to be a big deal going forward. So if they were going to kill anyone, it would be him, sadly. But because he's a fantastic actor as well, and we had the pleasure of meeting him on the red carpet. He was lovely human being.
I don't remember meeting him.
Oh yeah, we did. I remember him well. He was so nice.
Whirlwind of a night, Dan, I'm sure.
We met a lot of people, and I didn't recognize all of them at the time either. So
no, because they're all new.
I'm still putting the pieces together of who was who actually at this point. I just want to give a shout out earlier on. We had a super chat from Luke Elkins who says, "Hope you can do this full time soon, mate. Dying for more Silmarillion content."
Oh, that's so nice.
That's lovely. Nice. Yeah, I appreciate that very much, Luke. Thank you. And yeah, there will be chapter 19 will be coming. Trust me, I'm already working on it. I'm looking forward to sharing that with people. We had another super chat from Luke saying, "Will we see Annatar?"
In this episode? Is he asking about this episode?
I don't think so. I think it's more of a general question.
I don't think we will in this season at all.
I'm assuming that Luke has seen the episode and that most people watching have seen the episode, because we're going to spoil the whole episode.
Yeah. Spoiler warning.
I think we'll probably see a plot line that resembles the plot line with Anatar, but we might not get the name Anatar, because the name Anatar is just in the Silmarillion mostly.
Yeah.
I think it's in other places, but other books that they don't necessarily have the rights to.
I think we will know, like, before the collective knows. All of the Tolkien nerds will probably figure it out first, but I don't think it's going to be like a haha, there's Anatar, everybody knows who it is, he's being introduced, but people are going to be like, oh, and I just don't think we're going to see him this season. I think that's going to be, or we might get like a, an Adar type cliffhanger for like the end of final episode 8. We might see like he's back or something, and we'll be like, oh, who is that? That's what I feel.
Yeah, an MCU type of moment,
Yeah.
So, through context clues, I have deduced that Anatar is Sauron.
Yes. So Anatar is the Lord of Gifts, he's called,
right.
And he's that's how he's referred to in the Silmarillion.
Right. I knew that somewhere in the back of my brain, and I'm glad I got there before I opened my mouth and was wrong.
So he's the guise that Sauron takes on when he goes to the elves in disguise.
I just once I connected the name, I'm like, I got you.
Right.
Yeah.
But I have my theory about who it is. It's a common one, so I don't think it's going to surprise anybody to hear what
Halbrand.
Yeah. I mean, the parallels are just too strong.
Yeah. I will say I agree. Like, I have been against this theory the whole way, because I just cannot believe that Galadriel will be that blind when she's been chasing him the whole time. But when she, like, for the last episode, when he dealt with Anatar, and when he dealt with Adar, and also the fact that she's now taking him to what is most likely Eregion, I just feel like she's bringing Anatar to them, and then he's gonna be like, "Hey, why don't we make some rings?" That's the vibe I'm getting right now, and I'm terrified of it.
Is that credible coming from some random guy from the Southlands, though? I mean, we know he's a smith, but making a sword is very different from making a magic ring, and it's unprecedented, powerful magical technology that has never existed before.
Who is he then? Okay,
Halbrand. Why is it important? Yeah.
Counter theory. You ready?
Go on.
The character named Isildur is dead. In remembrance, Halbrand takes the name Isildur.
That will piss off a lot of people.
Yes. No, Isildur's not dead. It's a fake out. Let's talk about that, because this is about
the horse runs off. There's no way. Yeah.
No, they're basically they're setting up another callback to another Peter Jackson moment where the horse comes back to save Aragorn. That seems clear to me. The Balrog, the horse, is set loose later on in the episode, and he's going to come find Isildur.
Yeah. I feel like that's another thing that I had about this episode that confused me. I don't know if I'm too tired to pay attention or something, but first of all, I completely missed the fact that he like died. So when they showed up and Elendil is like, "Where's my son?" and everybody's crying, I'm like, I'm sorry, what? When did this happen?
Right, because he's not dead.
Yeah, no. and I didn't see, it wasn't dramatic enough for me to go, oh no, he died, when it happened. So I completely missed the whole purpose and the whole point of that scene. And then my question is, that's kind of important. So why did I ignore it? Like, why did my brain not pick up on it? Because it's kind of a big deal that Isildur might be dead, I don't know. But
he's obviously not dead. I mean, everybody watching this, not everybody, but the vast majority of people watching this are going to remember Isildur from the movies at least, and
Yeah.
I think everybody knows she's not dead.
Right.
What does happen rather dramatically is obviously we see Ontomo is dead. That's not really dwelled on long, but Miriel goes running into a burning building and takes them with her in order to get some Southlanders out of danger. And they succeed, and then this happens, and this I missed first time round.
I did as well, but totally caught it the second time around because I'm like, she can see. But you will, yes, you're right.
Yeah, Dan. So this is the moment, I think, when she loses her vision. And the sparks fly, and then she gets blown out of the building by a kind of small explosion. Which is it's quite well shot, this whole scene, actually. I did appreciate it cinematically.
Yeah, it was well done. It was. I just missed the whole Isildur thing, and then they go in and they save a bunch of people that we don't ever see again as well, and then I'm like, so what was the purpose of this? Was it just to fake Isildur's death? Because maybe if it was Theo that was in there or something, it would be more like, oh, filmatically that would work better. But then, I mean, it's nice of them to establish Miriel as like the kind queen who saves her people.
I have a counterpunch, okay? We're not sure how Elendil is going to behave in the future, and him thinking Isildur is dead might propel his character in a direction that we might not have seen him go otherwise, which we're already seeing hints of, where he's extremely broken up and he's like cursing that he ever came here. So I don't know, as far as the source material, what it says about what Elendil does, but it is entirely possible that he behaves in a way that he wouldn't otherwise.
Well, what it does do is establish Isildur's, the fact that he wanted to stay in Middle Earth, and the fact that he wanted to, like, he's gonna eventually be a part of like building Gondor and doing all of that. So maybe that's part of like the storyline now. It's that, oh yay, the boat left me, I'm here now, I might as well build up my reputation and my reign with these people and build the city, and so it's going in that direction. He's not going to hop on a boat and be like, take me to Numenor,
They've already left him behind. I don't think he can get back to Numenor until somebody comes and finds him.
If they're sailing at dawn, or the tide, or whatever it is that Miriel said.
One of my favorite Easter eggs in the previous episode was the scene with Isildur and his two friends, where I think Valandil asks him, so what do you think of the mountains? And Isildur is very enamored of the countryside there, and that is almost exactly, it'd be on the other side of the mountains, but that's where he will one day build his city, which is Minas Ithil. Which is one of my favorite Easter eggs that this show has given us, which I guess a lot of people might have missed. But so maybe there'll be some setup for that will happen now. The Southlanders are heading towards Pelargia, which maybe he'll head that way first as well.
Yeah.
If he manages to get back to the camp, but after the Numenorians have left, but the Southlanders are still there in the next episode, maybe we'll see him join up with them for a bit. I don't expect we'll get very much of the Southlanders in the next episode, but we'll see.
No, because the important people have kind of sort of left, and the important part of that storyline is kind of over. Right. I suppose we will see Bronwyn and Theo and all of those as well develop in some direction, and they're going to fight back at some point, but I don't think they're important for like the end of season 1.
Anyway, let's move on to the Harfoots, because our next scene is them coming into the grove and the orchard where that was their destination. And so Largo says,
oh, there we go.
So that was our surprise.
You did say you had a surprise. This is beautiful. I like it. It's very, very good.
I actually have this because I did a Lyanna Stark cosplay, and if you read the books, oh my gosh, my green screen is killing the is making the leaves see through.
Yeah, because it kind of looks like just blue flowers right now.
Yeah, it's not. Let me just turn off my my virtual background for just a second so you can see. Yeah.
Oh yeah, nice.
Well, I didn't realize
Please
how
wear
bad
that
it
for
was.
our game as well. I would love to see that.
Yeah, I don't. I can't do the background with it though because the
green screen. Yeah,
the leaves just disappear into the background.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that. Oh well.
Yeah, green stuff and green screens don't go well together.
Yeah, but you got the blue flowers for a second.
I just want to pick up on a point from the chat here from Brief Mortal 11, who says the Pelargia drop was a shock. The show had given a strong impression that the Númenóreans had not been near Middle-earth.
Yeah.
They did kind of hint that they hadn't been to Middle-earth in a long time.
Yeah, that they hadn't been there for a while, but that they have been there before. They know of Middle-earth. They've been part of it. They've been there. It's just after they started wanting to separate from the elves and wanted to create sort of a new world that was only Númenórean and forget about everything else, they kind of cut it off. But then they're aware of it because as Alfarason said, there's a lot of riches there, so the trading and stuff is good. So they know about it, and obviously they have no phones, they have no internet, so they're not going to be able to Google it. So they have been there, they know it.
The map that we saw in the previous episode, when the Númenóreans were sailing into the Anduin, into the river, when they were just about to make landfall, the map that Miriel was studying in the ship's cabin had Pelargia on it, actually. So if you saw that map, it wouldn't have surprised you because, I mean, well, it was in another language. It was in Adunaic, but it was marked on there. It was clearly Pelargia. So, yeah. Anyway, Harfoots. So...
Yeah, charming little story. Probably the slowest one out of all of them. The least action-filled one, but then again, I picture like the Shire and the Hobbits as well, the least action-filled area. They're slow people. They like to stick to themselves, so it makes sense that this one isn't as full of dangers and action and excitement as everything else. The weird thing about it was that they ended it on such a dramatic note in the episode beforehand. But then it's like, it feels like they've just sort of, okay, don't worry, and then moved on. And yes, you can tell that they're afraid and that she doesn't fully trust him, but he's still there wondering, like, I just, it was just swept under the rug, and then she's the only one who knows about it, and she's afraid. But
it felt this week, picking up with the Harfoots at the beginning of the episode, that maybe there'd been some scenes that had been cut, actually.
Yeah, a little bit. Like they left a little bit to be questioned, but not like I still enjoyed it. It felt it was exciting when they came across, and then they were so happy, and then you realized it has to be fairly close to the volcanic eruption, because that's what's happened there, right? Like there has been some rocks that have been flung there and burnt off their orchard, so they're not that far away.
No, it was. I was wondering how far east they'd gotten. Actually, in the last episode, we got that scene that was very Indiana Jones with the dotted lines on the map, and I was kind of wondering how far east they'd gotten, because it looked like they were heading towards like Rhûn, in the Sea of Rhûn, and the kind of inland sea in the east of the map.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it was hard to say.
Large rocks like that are not going to go that far.
Yeah, they're not.
I mean, they'll go a long way, miles, kilometers, whatever, but like not 100, not probably even 50, or
not over the top of a mountain range either.
Right.
The interesting part, though, is when you look at the overhead shot, kind of like looks a little bit like the Shire, but then you're like, the Shire wasn't that close to Mordor, was it? So, but what are they gonna do now? Like, I don't know. I'm kind of half expecting them to sort of be like, this is a nice place. We're going to settle down here, because they're like, screw traveling. We're done. We're done. We're just going to dig holes in the ground and stay here. It's kind of half what I'm expecting them to do now. Yeah.
So Sadok does say it. He says it's, I don't remember the exact quote here, but he says words to the effect of his grandmother, I think it was, told him that he'd heard tales of mountains that sleep for hundreds of years and then come back to life and spit fire into the countryside when a new evil is rising.
Yeah.
So
he said it was his great grand, whatever that means.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not sure.
I would guess that's like his great grandmother or great grandfather.
Right, for sure.
Yeah. But it's interesting because they're obviously they have these prophecies about this, and he has this book that he's carrying around where he's like, oh, this doesn't make sense and this doesn't make sense. So he obviously knows things, and he can pick up on the fact that something isn't right here. And obviously it isn't, because right now we've just seen the creation of Mordor happen. And Sauron is on the rise. We know somewhere something is happening. We just don't know. We haven't seen who it is or what it is yet. What his plan is, we kind of know, but in the show. So it's an interesting one because hobbits are so. This is Harfoot's, but hobbits are so peaceful and withdrawn from the rest of the world in the Lord of the Rings. These wandering folk here, they stick to themselves, but they know a lot about the world.
Sadok knew about Eärendil in a previous episode. He
Yeah.
talks about how he's heard tales of people becoming stars.
Yeah.
So
And how does he know
apparently he's read the Silmarillion.
Yeah. Apparently, like the interesting thing about it is that how do they know if they keep to themselves and they're so terrified of people? How do they hear these stories? Because the way they hear about these stories is by meeting other people who tell them stories. So either there are other wandering Harfoots other places, or they somehow communicate with people on occasion.
I will say, I'm sorry, I'm going to try to answer that question which is wild speculation. Okay, we see in this episode that Harfoots are basically ninjas. They can be anywhere, watching anyone at any time, and only know about them when they want you to, i.e., when Nori steps out and announces herself to the three white sorceresses,
the mystics.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to call them, but
they're referred to mystics referred to as mystics in the soundtrack. So
okay, mystics, great. That's what I will call them from now on. And Sadok, he knows where the human settlements are and stuff. So I posit that there are always Harfoots like Nori on some level that will sneak off and hear things and maybe bring that back.
Yeah, and they'll probably be watching because they need to survive, so they need to know whether or not there are humans nearby, whether or not there are elves, dwarves, what they're doing. So I would guess so, and they would come across people every now and then. It just takes them a while to figure out if they can trust them or not. I do have an interesting why, because they show up and they get they find the orchard burnt. And then they get the meteor man to try and fix it. And because of what happened beforehand, Nori's freaked out. She doesn't trust him. So when he seemingly breaks the tree and almost kills her and her sibling doing it, she just panics and they kind of decide to banish him based on that because she's already afraid of him, and don't even give the chance to wait to see if it happens, because trees don't just magically grow healthy. It's going to take a little while. But why would she step out and announce herself in front of the mystics? They look absolutely terrifying. And there's three of them, not just one, and they are fully awake, fully dressed. It's just, I know she's adventurous, but she's not stupid.
Yeah, that wasn't her brightest moment.
No.
No.
It just made me say, like the only thing that made sense to me is that she's maybe trying to convince them that he went the other way because she's afraid that they're gonna follow him. So she tried to stop them and be like, no, he went that way. He didn't go that way. But it was still very, very, very stupid.
To put it in Dungeons and Dragons terms, she failed her bluff roll.
That is accurate.
She rolled at a disadvantage.
I'm glad you brought up D&D. So Arondir is a level 20 fighter, dex based, of course, with the archery fighting style. All right, I'll stop there.
Yeah, it just.
He uses the same word that he used in the previous episode when he tries to heal the tree here, which is Invinyatar, I think it was, which means to heal or to renew. So he's trying to do the same thing to the tree that he did with his arm in the previous episode, which also didn't work out very well. This is a guy who's not really attuned to his own power set. He doesn't seem to understand how his own powers work.
I kind of feel like he's operating on instinct, and that he's just doing because it was the same with the arm. Like he was in pain, so he knew how to try and heal that. And it was the same with the tree and the fireflies, that he overexerts himself and that he pushes it so hard because he has no control over his powers that it has this explosive effect. And then the fireflies die, and then the branch falls off, and then after that, like, the magic happens. But I feel like he's definitely, he has the potential to be both good and evil, but I think it's the matter of the outside influences that can turn him, which is why the mystics are looking for him as well. So I feel like it can go either way. But after this episode finished, I was like, yeah, he's definitely Gandalf.
Okay. Please don't be Gandalf. Like,
yeah.
I do feel like we know Gandalf's storyline. It's not needed for us to get prequel Gandalf.
I would love for him to be one of the blue wizards.
Yeah, it could be.
Which I would like to point out was a theory that Dan kind of was. I misquoted in my own stream, or I won't say misquoted, misattributed. Who said a thing, and it was you, Dan, that actually said the thing about how the stars look like Gemini, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure they do, actually. I've had another look at that, and I mean, it does resemble one part of the constellation Gemini, but it doesn't really match up. So I'm not sure that that's right. They say in this episode, actually, about the stars, I think Sadok says that the stars haven't been seen for a long time in that particular sort of, like, I think he refers, I don't know exactly how the line goes, but I wish I'd written this down, but because it's interesting. But he says something to the effect of his ancestors recorded this star constellation, but it hasn't been seen in a long time, which is interesting.
Yeah, so maybe he's lived before somehow, or maybe he's an entity. Maybe he's Tom Bombadil. Who knows?
Right. But like, he's a Meyer at minimum, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would assume so. I mean, his powers seem to be incongruent with anybody, that would be what you would refer to as an incarnate within the Tolkien legendarium. So he's not a man, he's not an elf, he's not any kind of terrestrial being. He's an incarnation of a Maiar, I would assume, which definitely suggests wizard. My only theory about the mystics at the moment is, well, not my only theory, but my only interesting theory, I would say, is that maybe they are working for the other blue wizard. And maybe the other one has gone kind of rogue. There is a storyline that Tolkien writes in his notes. It's published in, I want to say, Unfinished Tales, but I don't know at the moment. I don't recall where it's published, but Tolkien does tell us in one place that the blue wizards did go bad in the East, and they developed these cults around them, these kind of mystical cults. And so that could be something that they're doing here.
Yeah, that could be. I've had this feeling that they are kind of like, what was that? I'm terrible with names, but the uh priestesses of like Melkor, the cult. Either that or they somehow work for Sauron. They're definitely evil. I had this moment in the scenes with them where I was kind of holding my breath, waiting for them to either be evil or good. And then, of course, with the flame throwing and burning of everything that these poor Harfoots hold dear, that was proven, obviously, that they were not friendly. Sadly.
Okay,
So
so it makes me feel like because they clearly have more power than they might be Maiar as well. They might be not a Balrog. A Balrog is also a Maiar, yes, right, but not exactly the same thing. But they could be some other kind of Maiar that we don't actually know anything about. I assume they could invent something for their story needs.
yeah, and also for the need of, because when you think about it, like there are several wizards that existed in Tolkien's stories, but all of them were male. So maybe they needed to put in some female ones to have a purpose in there as well. Because we did know before the show started that they were gonna invent some new characters that would fit into the storyline, but weren't necessarily 100% canon. So I don't know if they're going to be a major part of things, but they are definitely going to be driving the storyline forward somehow. And the question is, what do they want? Who do they think that Meteor Man is? Because they seem to want him pretty badly. And then why do they want him? Do they think he's Sauron? Do they think he's a wizard that they can turn to evil? Is he a Balrog? Who knows? But it's interesting, and that storyline I wanted to see more of. It's just been developing so slow.
Yes, it has.
I don't know if we'll see it by the last episode either. I think that this is a storyline that we're gonna keep following for a little while longer, especially considering that this Harfoot's part of this episode ends with the Harfoots separating, basically, and Nori and her friend and her mother and Sadok as well goes out on a mission. And then my question is, are the rest of them going to keep traveling? Are they going to stay there and wait for them? What's going to happen now? Are they going to be separated forever? Is this like the beginning of a new story for these Harfoots? What's going to happen now? I feel like they've just left everyone else behind and they've taken the most important parts of the Harfoots and taking them to a different place.
Yes, I think we are done with the rest of the Harfoots for the time being. I don't think we'll see them again for a while, if at all. So the people in the chat were pointing this out earlier on. Sadok says to him that there is Greenwood the Great, which later becomes Mirkwood. So people know Mirkwood from The Hobbit and so on. And he says on the far side you'll find human settlements, and maybe they can give you some answers about your stars. So he's headed that way. And so the Harfoots are following him. So presumably they're going to enter Greenwood. And at this point, the Sylvan Elves are already there. So Thranduil, Legolas's dad, is there. And his dad, Oropher, although they may not have the rights to Oropher, is also there. So potentially
I'm excited to see that new character.
We could see that location in season 2.
I'm excited. Yes, more elves that I could potentially play.
We'll see.
I'm pulling for you.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
She'd make an excellent Sylvan Elf, actually. That would be a great role for you, I think. I'm rooting for you.
Thank you.
So, maybe we'll even get... I've forgotten the actor's name, who played Thranduil in the movies. Lee Pace, back again. If we are going into Greenwood, that would be great.
Wouldn't mind that. No, he's fantastic.
The Hobbit movies, not the best movies, but he was fantastic in that role. Although I think he suffered from having too many of his scenes cut at times. But anyway, little bit of speculation there about where we might be headed there because of the fact that Greenwood was kind of noticeably referenced. I'm a bit confused about the geography of it though, because didn't we start off quite close to the south of Greenwood, where they started walking from? It seemed like we did, and then they came down to almost to like the Emyn Muil, and then we went through what will later become the Dead Marshes, and then we started going east, and now we seem to have gotten back to somewhere near where we started.
Yeah, but I feel like that's what I gathered from like how they were traveling. They're sort of traveling nomads, like it feels like they're doing the same route every time, and they have different spots for each part of the year. And obviously they can't really travel that far because they're tiny, right? So it takes them a while to get from one place to the other. So I'm guessing they just go in like a big circle, and they're going from one spot in winter to another spot in spring, and then summer, and then because of the food, because they need to find food. So maybe they were going to go to where they were staying for what seemed to be either summer or fall, and then they sent him off in the direction going back to, and then they of course they have to follow him. But yeah, I do agree. Like, it is a little bit irrelevant, the geography of it all. But at the same time, for someone who's well into the lore and know all the maps and stuff, it's kind of like, where exactly are they going, and why are they going there, and does it even make sense? Yeah.
Because they travelled a long way, and they do seem to have ended up very close to where they started. But
yeah.
But anyway, we should talk
Short
about
legs.
We should talk about Khazad-dum, I think.
Yes.
Because this was some of the best stuff in this episode. Although there was one very silly scene which worries me, but I did really enjoy the interpersonal dynamics and the acting, and a lot of the lines were good. But we did get more weird mithril plot, which I'm not enjoying. I'm being a little purist here, and your mileage will vary on this. I said I didn't like it in episode 5 when the mithril stuff came up, and people were suggesting that it's all a big lie and a smokescreen. But we got something in this episode coming up in a couple of scenes' time, which kind of confirmed what we'd been told already back in Lindon with Gil-galad. So we'll get to that in a second. I'm going to go through these screenshots here. Elrond is kind of trying to strike a bargain here with Durin the Third. He was great in this episode, actually. I really enjoyed his acting.
He is just an excellent choice. I was a little bit disappointed when Will Poulter was replaced because of a scheduling conflict, because he was fantastic as a choice as well, based on like how similar he was to Hugo as well. But this is just he's just impressed me with his acting, and he seems so. At first, he seemed very political, and I didn't really like him the first time I saw him. I was like, oh, but then he's showing so much heart and so much genuineness in his acting that is so easy to love, and I'm enjoying all of his scenes, actually. So
like if I may, in D&D we have half elves. We have a lot of half elves in Dungeons and Dragons, and one of the things that makes them unique is this idea that when a human looks at them, they're going to see an elf, but when an elf looks at them, they're going to see a human. And they do a really great job of portraying that, because Elrond is an elf, yes, sure, but he is the most relaxed, warmest elf of the bunch on the show. And that doesn't make him, a cuddly teddy bear type, but he does have his vulnerabilities. He does have a genuineness to him, when most elves seem to be very aloof, very above it all, you know.
Yeah, and devoid of emotion. Like Gil-galad to me for this whole season just seems like he has no empathy whatsoever. And it's just, I don't like him. I feel bad to say it as well, but I really don't like him. I feel like he's too political and too like devoid of feelings, and just the only thing I care about is my survival, and everybody else can just whatever, you know. But for Elrond, he has that softness about him, and he manages to balance it so well with the experience that he's supposed to have as an elf too, and the knowledge. Because some of the other ones that we saw earlier that were smaller characters kind of didn't feel elven at all because they were too human. But he sort of balances it out by being close to his humanity, but also very elvish. So, yeah. And it was an interesting scene, this one as well. We did discuss it a little because this was one of the screenshots like that came before the series. No, before the episode. And it was an interesting scene. I'm a little disappointed that, of course, he turned him away. Not surprised, disappointed. Obviously, it wasn't going to be that easy.
Well, considering what's going to happen when they do start digging for mithril, and you know the shot that we saw at the end of the episode, and the thing that they're going to wake up, the king has got a point, though, doesn't he?
He does, but how does he know?
We don't like him in this episode, but he is kind of right.
He is. He is. And he's right in his worry. He just doesn't know exactly what he's worried about. The only thing he knows is that every time you dig for mithril, somebody dies. And that's the only thing that he's seen so far. But it is a scene that is sort of preparing us for what is to come, both based on the premonitions and the bad feelings, and also the fact that Durin the Third is going to take over at some point, and we are heading in that direction. It is going to happen.
You'd imagine, yeah. Just want to say hello to Tolkien Airclart, who is
hello.
Lucas, who we went to the premiere with, aka Helmet Guy. Good to see you. Good friend of mine. So the next scene is the King Durin and Prince Durin having this debate, and Durin's making that point, pressing that point. Suspect that is Durin the Deathless's axe behind him, by the way, which is cool. Nice little Easter egg.
Like little details. I love that. Like the show has shown such craftsmanship, and they are so clever in like little details, and like there's so many things that you don't really see the first time, and then you see it again, and you're just like, oh, right, that's actually really smart. Yeah. This scene was just the prime example of a son who doesn't feel seen, heard, or respected by his father, and hasn't been for a very long time. But he's also overly ambitious, and because he's so desperate to be seen, he does make kind of out there choices that might cause pain for more people than one. So it's sad to see.
I'm going to agree with Luke. I love that they referenced LA.
Yeah.
But can I just say, this is probably my favorite representation of fantasy dwarves I've ever seen. Specifically, the way that the interpersonal relationships exist, not just between Durin and Durin, but Prince Durin and his wife, Disa, and Elrond, and not just his friendship with Elrond, but Elrond's friendship with Disa as well, which is not as defined, obviously, but she obviously has grown to care about him as well. I love how, if you'll excuse the turn of phrase, dwarves are not a monolith. They are individuals, each of them, and I really appreciate that they could have such a huge disagreement over what's right, and it still be tied to such a dwarven concept of what are we going to mine.
Yeah. And I also enjoy that they're not just the comedic sidekick. Like I've never had any problems with any of the dwarves in in The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, but I do know that a lot of people have been having issues with how they're being portrayed because they think they're too comedic, and that they're always that way. And I feel like for this, yes, it is one of the most light-hearted storylines, but it's also because of there's so much love there. There's so much to like. And it's not the comedy. Although I remember when we saw the first 2 episodes in the theater, everybody laughed during the scenes of Durin and Disa, and especially it's Durin, Disa, and Elrond. Like everyone laughed, and we hadn't laughed
those
at
scenes
all.
were really well received.
Yeah,
but it wasn't silly slapstick humor, and it still isn't.
No, it was
no, it's
actually
heartwarming. It's
yeah, I think it's the because they felt like old friends.
Yeah, it felt real. Like the chemistry between Durin, Disa, and Elrond. As actors, they have really nailed that. It just every single scene. And I think that's part of why I'm enjoying it so much because I just believe them. I believe that they've been friends for 80 years. Like I believe that they feel this way, and I'm enjoying that. I am dreading where this storyline is going, though.
Well, I think we all are, but like even just down to, and this is world building that I'm sure the writers of the show had to do. The way that, and maybe they do it a little too much from time to time, but the way they make them talk, the dwarves specifically, the way they make their colloquialisms are based on rock and stone. And, you know, he refers to his mother's womb as a forge. And that's just, you know, okay, that's a dwarf thing. It's subconscious. It's just how they talk.
Yeah. Because that's their people, like that's their culture. That is
Their
who they
experience.
are. Yeah.
He's really, really good at emoting disappointment, isn't he, this actor?
Yeah. And it's crazy too, considering how much stuff his face is covered in, because he's nearly unrecognizable. Like when you see the actor, you're just like, that's him? How? It's all the stuff. So it takes a lot of effort he has to act a lot with his eyes. And I think he does that really well. So this scene was great, I feel. Really good. And then the next scene kind of threw me off a little bit. Just because, yes, I understand her anger and frustration. I just couldn't latch onto it as much. But relatable again. Like she's also sick of having to fit into this box that her husband's father has set for them. And she has ambitions too. Like it's obvious Disa is a very ambitious woman.
Oh yeah.
100%. So
she made that very clear in this episode. And actually I think she was throwing out red flags in this episode a little bit.
Yeah, me too. I was a little bit scared of her by the end. But can I also just say from a world building standpoint, like I guess Disa needed a new meat cleaver. And of course, when a dwarven person needs a new meat cleaver, they just make it themselves.
Yeah, that was confusing to me as well. I was like, did that really need to be? But I feel like they kind of, yes, I can understand from a filmatic point of view, they probably needed to establish her because she's a dwarven princess and she's about to become a dwarven queen. They had to establish her as more than just a stay-at-home mom, I guess. She has to come across as more powerful. And based on what we've heard about dwarven women from before, like they were strong, you know, they would go out and fight with the men. They wouldn't stay home and do nothing. They would go dig in the mines. So they aren't just sitting at home looking after the kids and making sure the meal's ready. It felt, again, this was one of the many things that I was like, it kind of felt unnecessary for me, but for someone who is not as deep in the lore, maybe it was like, okay, well, that establishes that. That's okay, good, excellent. Just didn't need to be in that scene for my part. But apart from that, yeah, no, it works. I understand why they did it.
Okay, we've been going for a little bit over an hour now, so I just want to take a break and do a quick mid-roll and allow you guys to just promote anything you'd like to. I've already introduced you at the beginning, so we'll do this very quickly because I know not everybody wants to hear us talk about ourselves.
Really?
No,
How
really.
rude.
But that's my favorite subject.
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna leave now because that's disgusting. No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you guys so much for coming on. It's been a pleasurable conversation thus far.
Thanks for having us.
Nikki, I know you do a lot. So did you want to give any kind of like teasers for anything that you've got coming up online or offline or whatever you're working on?
Well, yeah, I suppose you guys already know that I'm gonna be playing a cool game soon with these lovely gentlemen and more. I'm also I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on Twitter. You'll find me under the handle that's in my name. But on TikTok I'm under N Bangen, so not Miss Bangen, but N Bangen.
Yeah, all
Nothing
your
major.
links are in the description below. So.
Oh, excellent. Yes, cool. Never done that before, so that's awesome. Yeah, so if you want to follow me on there, I do a lot of content. I don't really talk about Lord of the Rings that much on my own content. I just tend to go on other people's content and talk about it. And I have an upcoming show, like a major part in an upcoming TV or web series that is going to happen and be filmed in America. It's fantasy fiction. When that happens, I'm going to be showing you guys behind the scenes what's going to happen along the way. So do follow along. And yeah, thank you.
What was that called? I assume you're allowed to say because I think you told me at one
Yeah,
point, but I don't remember.
It's an indie production, so I am actually allowed to show people what goes on behind the scenes, and I am allowed to talk about it, just not like specifically the script or showing you guys scenes because that would be spoilers. But the series is called 2, like the number 2, and the first episode, the first season is called A New Man. So it's a 15-episode season that's going to be showing on a web platform. But each episode is about 10 to 15 minutes long. So it's not like nowhere near the scale of this show. But
not much
it's good. It's a good script and it's going to be amazing. So I'm excited to show you guys.
I look forward to watching that.
Thank you.
And Stephen, you have your channel as well, Here Be Dragons. You talk about nerdy stuff every Sunday, except not this Sunday.
Every Sunday except not this Sunday. Yeah, we're taking a week off. I said it over the top. A couple of John just survived a hurricane, as well as like the passing of his mother in the same week. So it's just not a great time for him. It's not a great time for me for my own family drama. So we're not streaming this week, but we will be talking about the Rings of Power as a show as a whole the Sunday after. But yeah, my channel is Here Be Dragons. We mostly do nerdy pop culture stuff. We do retro reviews. I do interviews with other content creators as well.
I've been on there for an interview before, so if anybody any of the moderators are quick enough to put that in the chat, that'd be great.
It's called, my series is called I Know That Nerd. And yes, Dan has been a guest on I Know That Nerd, where we talked about everything else that you wouldn't learn about Dan from just watching Tolkien videos. But yeah, so there's no, and we don't plan that far ahead. It's just whatever's popping and whatever's hot, whatever we want to talk about. So
yeah,
we stream once a week on Sunday afternoons. But our time slot is such that when we end, you have 1 hour until Hot D comes out. So it's like really the perfect time slot.
Yeah, it's a really fun show. It is a good time slot. You're right. Sunday's a good time for this sort of content. So yeah, anyway, we'll get straight back into the episode, I think. Let's move on to the next scene here. Let's find my screenshot. Actually, we should probably talk about the second half of this scene. I assume you guys are good to keep going for the moment.
Yep. Yeah. Let's do it. Let's power through. All right, it is 1:30 here, but let's power through.
Yeah, if you get too tired for this, like by all means,
the sun is still up.
The sun is still up. As you can see, I have light. So
I'm like a fully nocturnal person anyway, so this is just normal for me. But Anyway, so Elrond comes in, and they almost don't say anything. He just sort of looks at Durin, and Durin looks at him, and it's wordless, really. And
Heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking.
communicates everything with a look. And Elrond is, I mean, he's not often affected by emotion in this way, as he is. He's usually quite composed, and so to see him looking like this is it does kind of hit you, I think.
It does. It's a really heartbreaking scene because it feels like it's the end of a friendship, which it isn't. But Elrond truly believes that this is the end of the elves, and you can see he's broken not just because of the friendship, but because he thinks that I'm gonna die, kind of vibe. But the great thing is how well he conveys his disappointment, but also manages to sort of reassure him that this isn't on you. Like, you shouldn't feel bad for this. This isn't your fault.
Yeah, he quickly turns it around because it's not long before he has that charming smile on his face again, and he's the one offering commiseration to his friend that has no problem expressing emotion, clearly.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, even if he is fading and is gonna die, Durin's probably gonna die before him anyway. So it's like, why are you crying again?
Well, that's the funny thing about this storyline is it seems to be a sort of ticking time bomb that they've only got months left to live, which is really bizarre, honestly.
Yeah, because in Elven terms, it's not. Well, in Elven terms, if you've lived 100,000 years, you're kind of like, I don't mean 100,000, but like 1,000-ish years. Having 50 years left feels like a second, I suppose.
Well, Elrond's about 3,000 years old at this point.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly what year this is set in, but
you're being made to feel like it's such an atrocity, like that is so horrible that they're gonna fade, even though they are just gonna sail off to the shores of the Valar, and it's a little strange. The whole storyline is a little strange, and I'm sorry, didn't they talk about fading in the Lord of the Rings as the towards the end? They were like, yeah, we're fading, we're gonna leave now, we're leaving now, but I don't feel like they've been leaving since the Second Age, so kind of weird.
Theory.
Yes.
Eventually, Durin the Third dies. Durin the Fourth becomes king. He indeeds the decree that they can dig the mithril. They dig some of it out, and that is used to help extend the life of the elves, but not be like the permanent fix that they say it was, which gives them enough time to stand against the armies of Sauron eventually and go on into the Third Age. Because really the end of the Third Age is the departure of the last of the elves, right? Or the final defeat of Sauron. And
it happens over about 150-ish years, I think, in the Fourth Age. So, the big wig elves all leave on the boat with Bilbo and Frodo and Gandalf. Galadriel and Elrond leave at that point. But there are others that are left behind after them. And then I think the last boat of elves has Kelleborn on it, actually. So we still have to get to him. We've got some stuff to talk about with him.
I feel like you're right about your theory that is what's gonna happen. The rings are gonna, like, some of the rings are made of mithril. So,
yeah, Galadriel's ring Nenya is made of mithril.
Yeah. So there it is gonna happen, probably in the way that you're saying. Whether it's gonna happen after they get word that Sauron is on the rise or not, I don't know. But maybe the little mithril piece that Elrond has is what they're going to use to make Galadriel's ring.
To make Nenya business?
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't help it. I make stupid jokes. Like, sometimes I refer to this show as Laudertrop to troll my friend John because he hates it.
You were also talking on your channel, which made me giggle when I watched it, about the Entwives.
Oh, right.
And will they have breasts? That was your question on your stream, because that's the important issue that inquiring minds want to know. Anyway,
it's an
it's an important question. It matters.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about the big stuff over here. I was going to make a point about what we were just talking about too. Oh, this is more of a question. Am I right in that the 3 elven rings were actually not made by Sauron? Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Because he realized what he was doing and wanted to safeguard himself.
Kelleborn made them in secret. He didn't. He didn't know that Anatar was Sauron still at that point. It was about 10 years before the One Ring was forged. But yeah, possibly he did kind of do it without his knowledge, just because it's not really clearly stated, but you could read that into it for sure.
It's kind of like when you believe so much in someone and then they do one thing that sort of makes you go, and then your gut feeling starts to grow, and then it keeps growing, and then that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. That he
person
kind of
has an actual name in my life, and we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
And so Elrond gives him back the nugget of mithril, which I think is going to become Nenya. I think Nenya will be built of this exact piece of mithril.
That's what I think as well.
Durin is like distraught, and again, wonderful acting. He does it all with his eyes, cries on command. That just kills it in this scene. But then we get this moment, which is there are 2 really silly, stupid moments in this episode, and this is the first of them. It's this mithril sliding across the table, and then it heals the leaf. Seemingly
repels
confirming
the darkness or whatever.
Yeah. So I don't know what they're going for here anymore, because I was hoping that this whole mithril thing was going to be a Sauron lie, and it seems to be proving itself. Because this is not how mithril works, guys. This is not how mithril.
But then again, like, it could still be a Sauron lie, because the tree leaves could have been cursed by something that is designed to, like, it could be, you know how magnets work? I don't know. It could still be like I know we're grasping at things here, but there could still be things. But I do think they're really going with the fact that the entire mountain is a melted Silmaril, and that the Silmarils are the thing that is going to heal the elves and bring back the light, which is not exactly how it works. But then
the Silmarils never came anywhere close to the Misty Mountains at any point.
No.
In the books, it's just a made-up thing. We still don't know that myth
definitely
is
not
true.
mithril.
So I did wonder though, with regards to the Kelleborn stuff that we get later on in the episode, whether that elf who fights the Balrog on top of the Misty Mountains was Kelleborn.
Sauron.
No.
It was Sauron.
Every character is Sauron.
Yes.
No. The myth of the Song of the Hithyglir that we got in episode 5 about the Balrog on one side and the elven warrior on the other, and the elf is pouring his light into the tree, and the Balrog is pouring all his hate into the tree, and then some lightning hit the tree, and somehow there was a Silmaril in the tree, and then that made mithril.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's what I got from it.
Strange.
Maybe that elf was Kelleborn, and that we'll get his story later on. If and when he shows up.
I'm excited to see where they're gonna go with that.
It's
excited as in, you're gonna have to make sense of that for me, because right now it makes no sense and it's not connected to anything, and it's actually really kind of strange. They didn't have to do that. Like, the mithril is important regardless, and important to that storyline regardless. They didn't have to do it that way. They could have, but I can understand that they might need to tie it. Then again, it happened anyway. Like, the dwarves and the elves did cooperate, which led to them using, like, joining forces and making the forge and making the rings. Like, that is already in the storyline, so why do they have to bring a Silmaril into it? I don't know.
I have no idea. I have no answer to that.
I don't have a theory for that one.
What is your opinion about it, by the way? Because you come kind of from, like, not as deep in the lore as the rest of us.
So for me, I don't have a problem with it from a lore standpoint. I maybe have a problem with it. That didn't happen this episode, but like when they originally told that story, the cheese factor was turned up a little bit too. So I thought it was a little bit like, oh yeah, okay. So mithril comes from a lightning bolt hitting a tree, and there was a fight, and like it's a little bit too much leading into the fantasy aspect for me.
Yeah.
But you know, it is what it is. I don't the Silmaril being there or not does not bother me.
Mm.
With the idea that Elrond calls it apocryphal and that it's not in the books and that it's very out of left field, this kind of silliness of it sort of actually did work for me when I was still under the impression that it wasn't true. Because I kind of like the idea of a myth within a myth, you know, because this is the Earth in its distant past is what we're seeing on screen in a sense. This is what happened in the Second Age of Middle Earth, and you know, Tolkien imagined that the Earth in its present state was in its like seventh age or something like that, and that this was the kind of the mythic, primordial, prehistoric past. And to have a myth within a myth like that, you'd expect it to be kind of over the top and exaggerated and distorted.
Yeah,
by
and
time
then it would work. That would
the
work.
retelling.
I can buy that interpretation. I really can.
The way that it was presented, it felt that way to me when we saw that for the first time in episode 5. But to actually see Mithril healing a plant like this, I mean, yes, maybe this is some kind of ensorcelment and it's an illusion or something. But I still don't like the implication, and I want them to dial this back at this point. And instead, they seem to be doubling down on it a bit in this episode, which worries me.
To me, it's the MacGuffin, and that's all it's doing is just being the thing. Like, we know what happens in the Third Age, so you don't have to convince me that the elves are still going to be here then.
Yeah.
So, and it's like the same thing with almost killing Isildur or like fake killing Isildur. You know, like there's plenty of people that don't know that like for those of us who have never seen any Lord of the Rings anything, okay, he's dead as far as they're concerned.
Yeah. And they don't know how big of a deal he's going to be if they've never even seen the Lord of the Rings. They don't know, so they don't have a connection to him. They're just going to be like, oh, that's sad. But so storyline, like, wise, it's for anyone who doesn't have any connection to the lore, I'm sure it works fine. For me, it's a little odd because they had all of the tools already there to make it a compelling story. Even without the Silmarillion part, even without the Silmaril, they didn't need to use that. Like the mithril is the reason why they awoke the Balrog anyway. They don't need it for that. They don't need it for the connection between the elves and the dwarves. They don't need it for the friendship between Durin and.
I think they need it at least from a plot perspective. I don't know if they need it for this, but they want it to give more motivation to Durin the Fourth to actually go for it, despite it being dangerous. Because of and like I don't care about the mithril, but I love Durin and I love Disa and I love Elrond in this show. Like real talk, I kind of love Elrond in this show.
Yeah, same. I do love Disa, and I think Sophia is a fantastic actress. But I do also agree with the whole. She was showing a bit of red flags and a bit of like power hunger in this episode. Yeah, it was like
definitely.
Yeah, she's not just nice anymore. She's terrifying.
I just want to pick up on this super chat here from Luke again, who says Aule is healing Yavanna, which is in reference to obviously the mithril healing the leaf, and Aule being the smith, and Yavanna being the kind of Mother Earth figure.
I suppose it is a nod, yes. It's just not. It just feels a little unnecessary, and to take on such a big change in the canon is a risk that they've taken unnecessarily, in my opinion. But I am enjoying it. If I just completely separate myself from all of the lore, I'm still enjoying the storyline. I'm still like here for it and looking forward to seeing where it's going. So I have to like I'm always of two minds when watching this because I'm watching it as a Tolkien fan and I'm watching it as someone who's just been introduced to the show and trying to enjoy it. And I am. So
That's fair.
I just blew my own mind over here. I've got a new theory. Okay.
Go on.
All right. Disa is actually Sauron. She's a smith.
yes.
And
You're not the
she's
first person
really-
to suggest this. Tolkien Twitter has been saying this for the last
Really?
24 hours. Yeah. It's been
I
something.
Yeah,
thought
I'm
it was-
getting a
I thought it
vibe.
was being
Yeah.
A, clever, and B, ridiculous at the same time.
No, you are doing both of those things.
Okay, good.
And
Okay,
I don't think it's a serious theory, but I have seen people tweeting this today.
No, here's another one. I'm actually Sauron. I have been cast for season 2, and I am going to be there, and I'm going to be Sauron, so you will see me on the screen.
Terrifying.
I see somebody in the chat. Pasquale says nobody see Lady Macbeth's side of Disa in this episode. I think we all did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
definitely came across as
Big time.
pretty scary.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about evil, but like, don't cross her. And maybe she's just hyping her husband. You know, like we're gonna rock everything. We're gonna be awesome. We're gonna be a power couple.
Hmm. Yeah, but it feels more than that. But then again, that is also a storyline that exists within the dwarves, the sort of half maddening desire for more gold, more valuables, more power. That is the reason why they had those big downfalls. That's the reason why they attracted dragons. That's the reason why they woke the Balrog. Things don't go well for the dwarves because of their sort of greed. And it comes from somewhere. So I can understand they need to establish that in some extent.
All true.
They are
yes.
going to start digging, and they're going to dig a lot.
And
The interesting part,
you know what
about-
amplifies that aspect of the dwarves as well. Sorry to interrupt, but
No, it's
the
fine.
rings of power, of course, that's the effect that the 7 dwarven rings have on the dwarves. Is that they have this inclination to want to mine and to have these material possessions and to grant and to craft and to seek out gold and mithril and jewels. And that just is amplified by the rings of power. So we're going to get a tragic storyline with the dwarves.
Many.
In many ways, in all the storylines, we're going to get tragic stories. We know what happens with the Nazgul, and we know what happens with the elves. But the dwarves is another aspect, and so that's going to be the real breaking point, is when they get given rings.
Yeah. I feel the final part of that scene with the dwarf and like the mithril, when the leaf goes down into that cave, it feels like it's just a massive open cave and that the Balrog is just at the bottom. And I'm like, are they just gonna open that and then the Balrog is gonna be like, hello? Because we know that that's not gonna happen for a while. Like they still have to dig a little bit or a lot before they actually get to the Balrog. So it felt a little sus that it was just one big cave. And it kind of looked like the cave where Gandalf fell down when he was fighting the Balrog as well. And I was like,
Did a little bit, yeah.
I mean, that wouldn't be necessarily the craziest thing, given that the fight has to take place near there anyway.
yeah.
I will say, like, the leaf could be falling longer than it just actually showed on screen. You know, it could have cut to the end of it falling. But I'm going to agree with you. I thought the visuals of a hole in the wall where you could stick your face in there and see a big opening with mithril running through it. I'm like, no, this is just not how rocks work.
Yeah. Well, you do find caves, but it's kind
Sure,
of
but like they're hollowed out by water and they're not shaped like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it almost looked like the Underdark. There's another D&D reference for you, a little bit.
Yeah, the Underdark, right?
Yeah. Anyways, should we talk Galadriel?
Yes.
Galadriel and Theo.
And Theo.
Galadriel is kind of staring out at the orcs, and Theo gets very angry in this scene. He wants to go and fight them. He tries to take her dagger from her and go rampaging off.
Yeah, this is the second time she like has to temper him, and
Mm.
probably again realizes that her anger has done a lot of damage to a lot of people she cares about, and also led her to this point. So she sees herself in him.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
him trying to take her dagger is kind of a metaphor for that, because that dagger has been a symbol of her vengeance from
Yeah.
episode 1, and that's what we see in this scene.
Yeah.
And she's starting to recognize that in herself. This is probably my favorite Galadriel episode from a Galadriel point of view, because we're really starting to see growth in her now.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, she's come under a lot of criticism from a lot of quarters of the fandom for the way that she's been portrayed, and how one note she's been, and how kind of silly she's been in certain aspects of like not understanding diplomacy and just making bad decisions when she was in Numenor and stuff. But we're starting to see a different side to her in the last few episodes, and post Mount Doom, we're definitely seeing a different Galadriel in this episode.
Yeah, for sure. And even the language that she uses in talking to Theo is very specific. Theo says something. Yeah. Theo's like, I'm going to go, there's orcs, I'm going to go fight them. And she says, we can't, it's over. And he says, it's not over. I won't let it be. And her response is, we must. We must. She's talking to herself as much in that moment as she is to Theo. She realizes she can't be sold. She can't go fight right now without the supplies, without backup, without a plan. Like, which is the first time we've seen her decide to, shall we say, strategically withdraw from the situation.
Instead of going like head first into it, which she would have done, it feels, in the beginning. She's sort of pulling him back and pulling herself back at the same time. He's a very aggressive young boy. He's very quick to anger. We've seen him many times. He goes from like seemingly very calm to very angry, and that's like teenage hormones all over. But
teenage hormones with a little bit of a side of borderline personality disorder as well.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And
yeah, he's a little intense, isn't he? Sometimes
he is. He can be. Yeah. So we cut to Elendil.
Yeah, this scene was confusing for me because I didn't realize that he was dead.
Isildur was
I was like, why is he crying? I was like, oh.
Well, he's looking for Isildur here. He doesn't know yet. And then Miriel and Valandil come afterwards and tell him. So this is when you were like, but that happened.
They do this twice in this episode. They do the like mistaken identity, is this person dead thing. And this is the first time here. That's my friend Jolie, and you're not wrong.
Yeah, not wrong at all. No, but and also, like, why is he so angry at Galadriel? Because, I mean, it was Miriel who ran charging headfirst into a burning building and dragged these two poor men with her, not Galadriel. But then again, Galadriel dragged them halfway across the world to go fight an invisible enemy.
And get blown up by a volcano.
Yeah. So there's plenty of places to place the blame. I feel like he's a little misplaced in being just angry at Galadriel. And I feel like also for his arch in the future. Then again, Isildur is not dead. So he's going to be like, oh, look, I'm sorry I was so angry at you. Because he's an elf friend, and he's always going to be, and he always is. And he's one of the well-known and respected warriors of his age.
Isildur.
Yeah. No, not just Isildur, Elendil as well.
Elendil. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So his arch isn't going to be that he's going to now turn into an elf hater. The question now, though, is when he goes back to Numenor, is he going to end up with the Kingsmen instead of the faithful? Is he going to be all of a sudden opposed to all of this and start arguing? Because it's not like Isildur can text him and be like, Dad, I'm all right, you know? So he's not going to know that for a very long time.
No, you'd imagine he won't.
No, he'll be back on Beric before dawn.
Yeah, he will. But then his father... No, because they sailed already. That was the last thing that happened in the episode. Was they went, or one of the last things was they were on the boat and they went.
One of the last things in this plotline.
Okay, you're right. You're actually you're right. You're right.
Yeah. So it's already too late for him to be on that ship.
Yeah, I don't imagine that Isildur will be able to catch up with them at this point because he's not going to have time, even if he's. Yeah. No, so he's going to get left behind. That's clear.
Can I just say, I don't know the actress's name, but the character is Miriel, the queen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cynthia Red-Eye Robinson, I think. Is the actress's name. Thank
you. All props. I do want to praise her performance in this scene specifically, where on second viewing, I could tell she was blinded, but on first viewing, I couldn't because she didn't want me to know. Which, and for
it's
her,
excellent acting. It's excellent.
It really is. I was super impressed with how subtle she was able to convey that idea of what was actually going on in the scene. So kudos.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. We predicted that she was going to go blind in this episode.
Did you?
I didn't know that she went blind. So
that does not happen in the books. As far as I'm aware, there's no storyline where she goes blind. There are multiple versions of her storyline, but I don't know of any where she goes blind. So, be curious if you guys figured that out.
Yeah, we did predict it. Like, if you go back and watch the predictions, episode 7 predictions from Fellowship of Fans, you'll see that we predicted it. And also, Anna Maria actually predicted the whole mountain would be a Silmaril before it happened. So we've had quite a few spot-on predictions that we just said as a joke. That's kind of scary.
Very nice. But I haven't thoroughly enjoyed her. Like, I didn't like her at first. I don't think you're supposed to necessarily like the queen.
No, she played her role well there as well, because she was easy not to like because she was a little bit standoffish.
She was another one who did have some red flags in this episode for me as well later on.
She's a little bit over-committed to the cause now, maybe.
That and something else, which was a bit of an Easter egg as well. She calls herself daughter of I forget the name. Her father's name in the books is Tar Palantir, which is his Quenya name. That's Elvish. But she refers to him by his Adunaic name, which kind of implies more of a kinship with the Kingsmen. And so she's talked already about the Faithful. The other faction in Númenor is the Kingsmen. And the Kingsmen are the kind of, they're the ones who are more hostile to the elves and more...
the ones that want Sauron as their advisor and, want to...
Eventually later on, that happens.
Want to take down the elves and the everything.
So her calling her father by that name was kind of like a mini red flag. It was like an orange flag, really, but it was a little bit concerning.
Yeah.
I wonder whether they're going to lean into the whole vision thing as well now that she's blind, because her not having her sight is kind of a little bit of a fantasy trope. The blind seer who can see the future, and she's already having visions, so perhaps those will intensify after this point.
Yeah.
But I agree, really well acted. I also thought that on my second viewing as well, because I didn't catch it the first time, and you can see it when you watch it back again. It's really well done, and well directed as well, for that matter. We cut back to Theo and Galadriel, and this is where they have the conversation where she tells him that one of my favorite lines in this episode. I quite like this scene, actually. She tells him, it is not good to assign goodness to, acts of slaughter, essentially. And rather paraphrasing here because I didn't write this down, but she says, it is not good to assign goodness to dark deeds, essentially. I wish I'd written that down because I really liked that line, but I didn't.
Excuse me.
No problem. How are you doing, Nikki? Do you need to sign off?
I might have to leave soon because it is almost 2 a.m. here, and I feel like I'm slowly faltering. Tomorrow is another day, but let's finish this block, and then I will head off.
Okay, sounds good.
Yep.
Stephen, any thoughts on this interaction?
No, although I also the quote you're talking about did stick with me. I'll talk a little bit more about Theo and Galadriel maybe the next time they come up.
Right.
Yeah, I like this whole friendship. I'm curious about, because she's so focused on him, like, because this has been a big focus. It's making me think that Theo has a future,
Mhm.
and that future is he's going to be someone at some point, and she's making him into a warrior essentially now. So my
He's
question
actually
is,
going to
who
be
is he?
Sauron.
He is Sauron. Yes, that was what I was getting at. No, no, but is he gonna become a future king of men? Is he gonna be a future Nazgul? Is he gonna be a future Witch King? Because he has already been interacting with a dark material, and he's shown fascination towards it. Is that gonna happen? Who knows? But the fact that they're focusing a lot on her and him, and her sort of developing him in a way, makes me think that he's going to be someone important at some point.
This handing of Galadriel's sword that we're seeing in this shot here was a kind of metaphor for maybe his healing, because he had that dark evil sword and she's giving him that as a sort of replacement, which is an elfish sword.
It's the first time she's giving one of her weapons to anyone as well.
Yeah.
And it's symbolic to him as well, given that, like, just last episode, he was given a spear for the first time. He needs to defend the defenseless over here. It's a symbol of adulthood, a symbol of being able to have agency, to sort of put the weight of your will on the world. And it's not something that Theo's probably ever really had before, until he came across that other sort of cursed sword key item. It gave him a taste of something. This is probably a much healthier way to get that taste. I mean, I don't know, giving a kid a sword is not ideal in any circumstance, but if you're, I don't think Middle Earth is experiencing an ideal circumstance on any level right now. So I really appreciate it as the symbol of adulthood that it is for young Theo here.
It's also like I really enjoy Kingdom of Heaven, the film, and one of my favorite parts of that is when I think there's a priest that asks him, do you really think that making a man a knight is going to make him a better fighter? And he says yes, and then he knights this entire village, and he makes them all knights. I feel like that's kind of something that works here as well, because she's giving him that responsibility. She's basically saying, I trust you to handle this responsibly, even though he's shown every sign of him being angry. She's giving him a strength and a power and her trust, which in turn will make him into a better person, because he feels like she relies on him, she counts on him, and she believes that he can do it. And just having someone, especially someone you look up to, someone of power, having that kind of faith in you, just it changes you as a person. So, and I think Galadriel knows this, but this is the first time she's actually showing her knowledge from all the thousands of years that she's lived, because I feel like she hasn't really been showing that before now, because she's been very not diplomatic in Numenor. She's been very untactful in basically everything, and then she was just knocked off her feet from this cloud of Mount Doom, and then now she's like, oh shit, I should probably use some of the knowledge that I have and pour it into the people here. So
yeah, she's a high level Oath of the Ancients paladin, but she's just been focusing a little bit heavily on her combat related skills recently, and she needs to get in touch with the other parts of her oath about, like, protecting people and being sort of like a defender of the defenseless.
Yeah, I kind of feel like she has had this dark cloud over her this whole time of revenge. And then when the cloud of Mount Doom and Mordor just knocked her off her feet, it was like the cloud around her head was wiped away, and all of a sudden she became a little bit more clear on what she needed to do and what was actually her purpose. Because now she's going back to the elves and she's like, I know something bad waits me there. Like, I know I'm going to be punished somehow. I know I'm going to be spoken to sternly because obviously she jumped the boat. She was supposed to go to Valinor. She was not supposed to be here. And then she's still here. So, but she's still doing it. And she's doing it now. And she's going to crawl back and be like, I'm sorry. I know this was partially my fault. Like, this happened. Help me. But I was right. But now I need your help. You know?
Cassie, yeah, I was just literally going to say this.
Right. Reflective Rambling, one of my moderators here on the channel, is taking requests for character drawings. So let us know what you want to see her draw, and it'll probably be on Twitter in the next day or two, and I'll probably retweet it. So
very cool. All right, well, I'm gonna head off now because I think we're finished with that part. I would love to stay for the rest, but I do need to get some sleep, sadly. But it's been really fun. Thank you so much for having me on.
No problem. Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
I'm excited to do more of this in the future.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see you in a couple of weeks for filming as well, and people will see that at some point.
Yeah. Very excited.
Once we schedule that. But yeah, take your
going on an adventure.
Yes. Take your little elf ears to bed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone in the chat. See you soon. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, to anybody who wants to check out Nikki's content anywhere, and she does a lot all over the place. She's always on podcasts. She does a lot of podcasting about Lord of the Rings, a lot of work with Fellowship of Fans. If anybody who wants to check out her acting, she's got a TikTok, she's got Instagram, she's got everything. It's all in the description below. So thank you to Nikki. And then there were two. So
yeah, and we'll just keep this moving along, shall we?
Yeah, let's keep going. If you want to drop out at some point, Stephen, then you can, because we're still only halfway through the episode right now.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah, I don't know how much longer we've got, but this is the scene with I think we'll probably skip this one because this is the scene with
confirmed where she loses her sight.
She loses her sight, which we've already talked about.
Right.
I do want to say Elendil makes a great face in this scene because he's just like, oh my god, this is just getting worse and worse, and you just see it on his face. It's just like, oh. He's serious.
He would have I love you, Sean Bean, but he would have made a pretty good Stark. I'm just saying.
Yeah, he would have. Yeah, you're not wrong.
Yeah,
I definitely like to see him in other franchises. This has been really good. I like how he grabs her hand and kind of comforts her as well.
I love the urgency of her, just please keep walking. It's that we see a lot of grief in this episode, and we see a lot of different stages of grief. And one of those is bargaining, and I think that's what she's doing right now. Nobody's got to know. Let's just keep going. Just please keep going. We see anger from Theo, quite a lot of anger. We see a lot of sadness, But yeah. Cregan Stark is probably too young to be portrayed accurately by that man.
He's probably already been cast, hasn't he, for House of Dragons?
And I think canonically during the Hour of the Wolf, he's 23 or something like that. He's super young.
Okay, I didn't realize that. I'm still reading Fire and Blood now, so I don't know the story.
But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking, but it's really good. This scene is really good from a sort of character development and letting these actors shine in a subtle way.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. I'm looking forward to them going back to Numenor and seeing seeing our Pharazôn. Well, he's not our Pharazôn yet. He's just Pharazôn right now. Spoiler: he's going to become the king. But seeing him take advantage of this whole situation, it's going to be quite painful to watch, I think, after what we've seen here. One more point on the blindness as well. Her father told her, don't go to Middle Earth because all you will find there is darkness. that takes on a double meaning now. That's a double entendre of prophecy, because she's literally in darkness. I'm guessing that's how Nikki and Fellowship of Fans managed to predict that, but I did not predict that myself. So, well done to them. But yeah, let's move back to the Harfoots. This is the scene after Meteor Man here has tried to reincarnate the tree, and Sadok is offering an olive branch here, the wise man of the tribe. And he hands him that sheet with the stars on it, and so we see that again.
I heard somebody say they thought it looked like Mordor, and I don't think so. Mordor is rounder shaped overall, and it's like I guess you would say whatever is the northern part there is too concave, and it should be convex. It's just I don't think it's Mordor.
Yeah, I'm not buying that it's Mordor either.
But given that there's so much about the stars, and he talks about nobody's seen stars like that since great grand said 1,000 years ago or whatever. So this is like the sky before Valinor was sort of removed from Middle Earth, maybe, which I don't know what that tells us, because I mean I'm convinced he's a Maiar of some kind, but
yeah, me too. Yeah, I don't know that we can really make out anything from this star constellation. It's going to be a mystery until it's not, frankly.
Right.
But I've not heard of any astronomers making any kind of having any input on this issue. So until I hear from an expert on this, I have no idea what this constellation is supposed to be. I'm going to stop speculating, because I did say Gemini before when I was on Robert's stream, which you watched, I think.
I did watch that.
That's what you were referencing before, but I don't think that it is that now, because if it is, it's just one small part of Gemini, so it's a bit obscure, maybe. Yeah, Berkwin of Gondor in the chat here is saying more mystery boxes. Yeah, it is kind of like that.
Yeah, and
your taste will vary on what you want in a story.
I don't think it's overdone just yet, but like, please give me more answers than questions for one episode. I don't even care if you end with a big question for the season, but like, I really would like some kind of answers. And again, but saying he's a Maiar isn't enough.
No, it's
because if Gandalf is a Maiar and a Balrog is a Maiar, like.
So is Sauron, by the way. I mean,
right? He's just like an order of magnitude. He's just a really powerful Maiar, I guess.
Yeah, not all Maiar are built the same. You know, Radagast is one too, and you know, Sauron would step on him. So, not
does all look like pie. Cause MC says it looks like pie. You're not wrong.
Does a bit actually. Yeah, it does in this drawing anyway. Yeah. I don't know how that helps us, but it does kind of, yeah. So this is another callback to the Peter Jackson movies. Last week, I was complaining about how many callbacks to the Peter Jackson movies there were in the previous episode. It was a very good episode last week on the whole, but there was a couple of things that I did nitpick last week. That was one of them. There was less this week. And this one's a little more subtle, but it reminded me very much, and I think intentionally so, of the scene with the white tree in Minas Tirith, and the camera pans up to a sprouting flower on the white tree.
I don't know that that's necessarily like a fan service thing for Lord of the Rings. Because I feel like the sort of fresh life sprouting out of devastation is a trope we see a lot. And this sort of camera movement and setup is used a lot to do that, especially with the person walking away and not really noticing it at first, you know.
I wouldn't say fan service is the right word for it, but it was another reference.
Okay, reference. I guess you could say it as a reference because it is used in the Peter Jackson movies, but that wasn't the first movie to do that.
Fair enough, yeah. Nori sort of also offers him a little olive branch.
She's still clearly scared of him, but cares.
Yeah, she's a good person, and so she
I
has that instinct.
So if Meteor Man turns out to be sort of a bad guy, I'm going to actually be very upset at this point.
I think it's very unlikely that he's a bad guy right now at this point.
Because there was a time where I thought he was. You know, I've been in quite a roller coaster with what I thought his identity was. But if an act of acceptance and like forgiveness because he scared her or maybe even hurt her, you know, like if that turns out to be wasted, I'm going to be very upset. I'm wearing my rainbow colored Be Kind shirt, so like from a storytelling standpoint, to punish that sort of decision making, I would not enjoy that, you know. Because as much as I will say, and it's clearly a child's hand handing it to a full grown adult, but nice use of the, you know, the Harfoots have kind of been the boring part of the season. I love them from a world building standpoint, but they can be a little slow. But
yeah, I released a video on the Harfoots last week, and I talked about how I thought it was an interesting choice to do them in this way. I find it interesting from a world building point of view as well. I haven't loved the storyline the way that it's been executed, but they have thought about what this society is and what it does and their customs, and so there has been some thought that's gone into it, and it has been an interesting choice, but it hasn't always worked in terms of the way that they've actually executed it, and it's partly because it has interrupted other storylines. And even in this episode, and we finally got some stuff happening with the Harfoots this episode, but even with this one, their first scene comes right on the back of Durin had just erupted and everything's gone to hell, literally, and everything's on fire, and Isildur's nearly dying, kind of assumed dead in this episode. And then we cut to the Harfoots and they're singing.
Right, thinking about names. So I don't disagree with you at all, but at least I do really enjoy, especially Nori, and everybody needs a friend like Poppy. She is the Sam of this sort of like group that's set now. Obviously, she's the Sam to Nori's Frodo.
Yes, I think so. Not in a way that's derivative either, which is good.
No, like, but in the way that everybody wants a BFF like Sam, everybody wants a BFF like Poppy. So, and I also really like that there was enough bad things happened to them that they had to overcome. Even just in this episode, and the speech that Nori's dad gives, which is, I guess I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but I don't know. I really like the Harfoots in this episode more than I have any other. But at the same time, you're right. They do sort of break the narrative flow sometimes.
Okay. This is the scene with Marigold where she's kind of admitting that she made a mistake and that she is just a Harfoot. This is a good episode for Marigold, actually. We got quite a bit from her in this one. I think her days might be numbered on this adventure that there are 4 of them are all going on together. I kind of worry about her now after this one. But I was surprised by her sudden support for Nori going off in search of the stranger here. But we're jumping the gun again a bit. But yeah, this was a nice little scene, which we don't need to dwell on necessarily. But so we finally got to the Kelleborn stuff here. All right, I have things to say.
Tell me about Kelleborn.
I have things to say. Okay, so people have already been. I'm going to deal with one thing first because people have been asking about this in the chat already, right from the start of the stream, which was the story that Galadriel gives in this about how she met Kelleborn is very reminiscent and suggestive of the way that Beren meets Luthien in the Silmarillion. She was dancing in a glade of flowers when they met. which is also a story from Tolkien's own real life, and so maybe they felt justified in kind of borrowing that. In the Silmarillion, they meet in the kingdom of Doriath, and it's not necessarily stated how they met exactly, like the exact scene isn't described. So it's fair enough for them to borrow that in a sense. But this did feel a bit kind of fan servicey in a way, because it definitely was a nod to people who have read the Silmarillion, I think. So I'm in two minds about it from that point of view. But yeah, I did notice that too for people who were commenting that on the chat. As for the issue of Kelleborn, so I already mentioned earlier on, I have a theory that the elf on top of the mountain with the tree and the Silmaril in the tree, maybe that was Kelleborn, and that he will be, he will give us kind of more exposition on that myth later on. I'm probably wrong about that, but that's my tinfoil about Kelleborn at the moment. More likely, I think he will show up later on as something like a prisoner of war character he will have been taken prisoner by Morgoth, and maybe he'll tell us things about Adar, or maybe he'll tell us things about Halbrand even, and so that he will be used for exposition later on.
Yeah. Okay. So Kelleborn is her husband.
Yes.
In the Lord of the Rings films.
Yes, in the Lord of the Rings films, that is. Yeah, that is.
Like, wait a minute, I thought he was alive, but like.
That blonde guy who's standing next to her, who has hardly any lines in the Lord of the Rings movies, is Kelleborn, and he has a fairly minor role in the books as well, but he's certainly present in the books as well. And it's mentioned in the Silmarillion that they meet and fall in love in the First Age. So from that point of view, that's accurate. Most of us, I think, had been assuming that she had not even met him yet, because he's not been mentioned in this show. Whereas she should be married and have a kid already. But with that not having been mentioned yet, it seemed to me that perhaps, and it seemed to a lot of people, that maybe she will meet him at some point in the course of her story in this show, and that they'll just move that piece of the timeline to a later date, and we'll see that on screen. But yeah, this definitely surprised me. This is the big moment, the shocking moment of the episode. Given that the plot had already deviated massively from what was written in the books, I kind of wasn't affronted by this happening now, because it was already nothing like what happens with him in the Silmarillion. But I don't know. I don't know what to expect, other than that we know he's not dead, and that it will be another mystery box where he is and where he turns up, which you'll either like or dislike.
Again, I wasn't bothered by this at all. You know, I kind of like the additional layer it gives to this character of why she is as driven as she is. Why she's as motive. Cozy MC says Kelleborn, having failed to return from battle, just fuels more of her understandable vengeance, and I think that's it exactly.
Mm-hmm. I think you have to wonder why this has not been mentioned yet, though, other than just to trick the audience.
When was the natural time to say, "Oh, I have a husband"?
She's gone on and on about her brother, though, hasn't she? We've certainly gotten that storyline told to us several times over.
I guess just maybe the feelings are different. Like, she can feel justified. Maybe it hurts too much to talk about her husband too.
Perhaps.
You know, like, it's just a different thing between a sibling and a romantic partner.
Yeah. Berkwin of Gondor asks, she's got a daughter too by this time. Is that right? Yeah, so I was just looking that up now, because I was fairly certain that it was at the start of the Second Age. And Tolkien Gateway, shout out to Tolkien Gateway, is backing me up on that. So it says likely Second Age 300, so she should definitely have been born by now. For those who don't know, Kelleborn later marries Elrond, so she is the mother of Arwen. And so, yeah, that's a character that we should expect to exist by now if they're going to follow the timeline of the books. But
I was going to ask earlier, and I forgot if Liv Tyler exists yet, but not yet.
No, Liv Tyler has not been born yet. Arwen has not been born yet in the books, or presumably in this show. It's possible that Kelleborn has been born and that she's not been mentioned. So maybe we'll see that later on. But she would presumably be quite a young Kelleborn.
But I will say this also, like,
who knows? Actually,
her bringing it up for the first time in this scene still feels somehow appropriate because of the relationship we've been seeing develop between her and Theo. And
that's totally fair. I hear that.
She gives him the steel. She gives him the sword, but also teaches him not to use it in this moment, so to speak. And the question of don't carry the weight of this. You might find it hard to put it down again. Well, how do you do that? And she doesn't have a good answer for him, which is very telling about her own situation. I really appreciate the sort of parallel storytelling they're going for between this thousands of years old elf and this, what is he, 15-year-old kid?
Something like that, maybe. Yeah. By the way, he looks a lot older now in person than he did when this was filmed. We saw him at the premiere, and he looks like he's going on 18 now.
When we covered the first half of the show on my own channel, I said something to the effect of, it looks like he grew 6 inches between episode 3 and 4 or something like that.
Yeah, he's growing fast. I think he's at that age. I would guess he'd be 15-ish as well, maybe.
I'm pretty sure he was shorter than his mother in episode 1 and a good bit taller than her by episode 4.
Yeah. Well, MC is cosmic. Maybe that's how you say that.
Ooh, that's
let me know how you say that. I'm guessing it's cosmic now that
especially with
fumbled into that pronunciation.
Yeah.
Is agreeing with you. They're both talking about family at this point, so the reason why she'd share husband info with Theo, maybe she just feels less vulnerable around the child as well to be able to share something like that. And maybe it also has something to do with being in the aftermath of this big disaster. Sort of
like it's her, which we'll see later when she's talking to Miriel, even she feels a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, she feels the weight of it. And that was the really great thing about this scene, actually, was her, regardless of what you think about the lore and the books and everything else, her vulnerability with Theo was kind of complex, and it was a better, more grounded and more complex Galadriel than we've seen in other episodes. And the way he asks her, what if I can't let go of the guilt and the responsibility, and she sort of doesn't know how to answer, is very self-reflective. Rico DeFries says, I'm going to bed. Thanks, Dan, for the great stream.
Night, Rico.
Cheers. Thanks for being with us. He said earlier on that his name was Dutch, so must be rather late for him too.
I got All Hail the Night's Queen is also Dutch. Hence the slaplecker in the chat.
Not sure what that means, but
sleep well.
Sleep well. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
I'm gonna guess.
Yeah. So this was the moment. I think this was the screenshot I took of Galadriel's reaction to that question. What if I can't let go? And she
having zero idea how to answer that.
Not at first. I think she hadn't found an answer to that herself, and so she answered without a lot of conviction, but nonetheless she had an answer. And if you're Tolkien, it's the right answer, because she invokes the divine. Basically, she says there is a greater power than darkness, and that there is a design at work even if we can't see it, essentially. which was quite powerful in this context. How did you feel about that answer?
Unsatisfied, honestly. I'm an atheist, so the gods have a plan is never the right answer for me. Although I understand the sentiment, and I don't have a problem with it per se, but everything happens for a reason. No, everything happens because chemical reactions and quantum uncertainty, and like I won't bore you with all of it, but like it's never satisfying me for me to put it in the hands of the grand architect of the universe who we can't understand the grand design. Well, you know what? If you no, this ain't the time to go down that road, but
no, this isn't the time or the place. But
it's
I will
fine.
say in response
I didn't
to
love
that,
it.
It makes less sense to be an atheist in Middle Earth because we kind of
because the gods genuinely are real. And as somebody who plays
Yeah.
a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, where there are literal gods that can grant power to clerics and whatnot, like that's fine. But even in that sense, it's not. In Dungeons and Dragons, there are real gods, but they don't have grand design the way it's suggested that Eru Iluvatar does.
Yeah.
But that's because Eru Iluvatar is a reskinned Yahweh, for lack of a better term, right?
An analog, I would say, would be the right word for it. But yeah, Berkwin of Gondor is saying there probably aren't any atheists in Middle Earth.
And there should.
I don't know about that because there is. I think there are peoples and cultures in Middle Earth who haven't heard, don't have like firsthand verified data on the divine. But the elves kind of not. I mean, Galadriel's literally met the Valar, so yeah, interesting scene anyway. Wonderfully acted. We'll see what happens with Kelleborn. I have some concerns about him being a prisoner of war for decades and centuries. But I think we should probably move on.
Okay, great.
Unless you have more to say, I don't want to stop you.
No, just so Kelleborn is her husband. Celebrimbor is the one that helps Anatar forge the rings.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm getting better at this whole who is everybody in Middle Earth thing.
The Cinder in names. Yeah. Celebrimbor is salt and pepper hair mad scientist elf who wants to do stuff with mithril and is building a forge.
When are we going to get Feanarf and Fardenfindel?
I don't know what you just said. The Finarfin, I think, maybe is like one of the names that you were kind of combining in that.
Feanor, Finarfin,
that blancmange of syllables that just came out
like,
is Galadriel's father, who has been mentioned in the show actually, but I don't think we'll see him. It's unlikely. There's not much to say about this scene with the orcs here, other than there wasn't a whole lot of suspense here for me.
This is one of the places, like, I don't want to tell anybody how to do their job, but they could have shortened this scene by a good 20, 30 seconds even of the orcs looking for them.
Yeah. So we're back in Khazad-dum. Durin is hacking away at this wall here with this ginormous pickaxe of his. We've already talked about this scene a bit, so I'm going to skip through it pretty quickly. Although if anybody in the chat has got anything to say about this, we will stop and talk about it. But I did like Elrond's confession that he threw the contest that they had. He says that he sort of wryly says to him, oh, well, my discipline helped me in our contest, all sort of smugly, and then Elrond sort of sarcastically throws it back in his face, like, oh, did it now? I saw this coming. I knew that we'd get this scene at some point because it was quite clear to me that Elrond had a strategy and that winning that contest was not it.
I do like it. It
was nice.
Winded. It's a good line.
Yeah, that was a good line. Yeah.
Like elves are OP. Let's be honest. Like at least Tolkien's elves, they are. They exist in a magical place between the divine and the mortal, really.
Mm-hmm.
But it's fun. It's fun to watch Elrond and Durin. It just is.
Yeah, they have good chemistry, these two actors. In spite of the fact that they're being filmed probably separately a lot of the time because of the forced perspective that they've got to do here. Yeah, this is this face that Elrond makes is great. Yeah, I like this a lot.
Yeah, that slightly smug. I mean, he's an elf. Of course, he's kind of a dick, but
he's being smug without being a total asshole, though, isn't he? He's making he's having a little bit of fun at the expense of his friend.
And that's part of the beauty, like because of the way their banter has been. Like I can't even tell if Elrond really was joking at first, or if he was just, "Oh, I'm going to rib my friend with this." The same way they did the story about the table at one point, or the story about how they first met in the trolls and who saved who, and like, I really do enjoy these two. And again, I said it earlier, I'll say it again. Best depiction of fantasy dwarves I've ever seen. They don't seem like a we dig rocks and forge things stereotype. You know, they're individuals with deep friendships outside of a deep connection to their family, different ideas about what's best for the future of their race. I really do love just how varied they're making the story seem, even though we're only getting like really three main dwarven characters, Durin, Disa, and Durin.
I expect we'll get more in the future. There is a character who's mentioned very briefly in The Lord of the Rings, who we never see him or her. We don't even know the sex or gender of this individual. I'm gonna go with they actually. Narvi is a dwarvish character that is mentioned on the inscription on the doors of Durin, who is a friend of Kelleborn. So Kelleborn, you remember, is the forger of the Rings of Power. Who we've met in this show. He is going to design the glow-in-the-dark doors that open up in The Lord of the Rings that Gandalf opens with the word Melon. And so that is a character that I expect to see in this show at some point.
That'd be cool.
I saw a theory on Twitter yesterday about him, about maybe that is going to be Durin's real name, his real dwarvish secret name. I think that's unlikely because of the fact that Narvi is a Old Norse name that Tolkien used, not a Khazad-dum name, i.e. a dwarvish name. But it's a nice piece of them using the lore in the books here of Durin almost giving Elrond his true name, his real name, because he sees him as a brother, and that was really, really sweet. They don't quite get there, and Elrond gets chucked out in the end. He gets, ironically, in a sense, he gets banished after bragging about throwing the contest that they had, which the results of which would have had him banished. Since then, he's been coming and going freely, and then Durin's dad comes in and does throw him out. Elrond peeking through this hole. And yeah, that is a lot of mithril. You can build a lot of mithril tanning beds with that.
Yep.
And so this is King Durin showing up, and he's not impressed.
The rage he displays here is so good.
Yeah.
Like, just how angry he is, and I don't know the actor that's playing Durin the Third here, but he's fantastic as well.
Peter Mullen, his name is, I think.
Okay. But he's fantastic as well. The voice is so good for him. I got to be honest, Dan, I'm starting to get faded out a little bit. I'm starting to lose my focus. We've been going for 2.5 hours, which is longer than I normally go.
This is longer than you usually talk for. Longer than you normally talk for. I think I'm starting to go too. I think what we'll do then. If you want to go right now, we can. But I think maybe I'll just finish with some quick fire questions from the chat. There's probably scenes that we definitely should get to.
That one, so good. Yes, with the Durin versus Durin when they're like shouting at each other and how dare you, but he's talking about how dare you invoke your mother's name when he was literally doing it earlier that same scene.
Yeah, hypocrisy, isn't it?
But I hate that he's right. Also,
yeah. And because this is a prequel, we know that he's right as well, and we know what's coming. So it's a difficult place to be in as an audience. It's quite a challenging scene from that point of view. I really liked that too. And his rage is really well conveyed, and Durin's indignation as well. I don't want to dwell on it too long.
This cute scene where everything's better again, and then of course it's going to be destroyed again.
Yeah.
So with this, just we get to see that, and this is probably what made me really kind of maybe the last nail in the coffin of me thinking that that Meteor Man might be a bad guy.
Yeah.
I think he's a powerful being that doesn't have full control over their abilities.
I think what's going on is that he doesn't understand his own form that he's in. I think he is a Maya, that's clear. But I think before this, he was not an incarnate Maya, in that he wasn't fixed to a single body.
Right.
Which very strongly suggests wizard, because that's what the Istari are.
They've never been made of matter before.
Exactly, like they're shape-shifting, formless beings that can take on a form as if they were wearing clothing, but exist in a purest form as just kind of consciousness and energy. And so the fact that he has been thrown to Earth the way that he has he's just very confused by his own physical manifestation, and so that is why he's struggling with his powers the way he is. Why on earth he's been sent to Middle Earth in the way that he has, and then he's just been like launched on a
we gotta trust Eru Luvatar's grand plan, man.
Well, in this case, I question his grand plan.
No, can't be questioned in the divine plan, man.
But I mean, at the very least, you have to say, like, surely if this is an early wizard, maybe they learn from this and they send the next batch on a boat, because that's what happens in the books. Is that Gandalf shows up on a boat. He doesn't show up thrown through the sky on a flaming fireball like this. And maybe teach him how to speak the local languages as well first.
Right.
Let's skip through all this stuff and just quickly talk about these guys.
And weird. I don't know what to make of these people, the mystics.
No.
I believe that they're bad guys. They burned a Harfoot village on purpose. Like, okay, you're bad. And they're looking for Meteor Man because he's good, and they know it, and they want to neutralize him before he can come into his power, and yeah, that's why.
We've had a few tiny clues about them. They also are clearly aware of the same star constellation that Meteor Man seems to be looking for, and we saw that on the kind of disc that one of them was holding in episode 5. They've had no lines yet. They've not spoken, which is peculiar. I think that these ladies are also potentially shape-shifting as well. So Nerd of the Rings, Matt from Nerd of the Rings was on a couple of weeks ago, and he was suggesting that the wolves that we saw in episode 5 were these 3 in different form.
Okay,
so that's a possibility.
I'll buy that.
And in the teaser for next week's, for the finale, we've seen Nori, who appears to be Nori, with the same kind of dilated pupils and light blue eyes that the Dweller, who's the leader of this group, has. So she's wearing the same contact lenses, basically, suggesting that maybe this is this character impersonating her in order to trick the stranger. So I think that these 3 can shapeshift. And my high-level theory about them is that they are connected to the Blue Wizards rather than to Sauron, or possibly both. Who knows?
Okay. I mean, I think that there's not enough information to know for sure one way or the other.
No,
and I can't speculate because I am not as well versed in the Legendarium as most of those other people. So yeah, I'll take their word for it. But they're creepy and powerful and kind of interesting to watch, at least.
This is the scene where they sort of disappear and then they appear right behind Ori, which was extremely creepy. She figures out where the stranger has gone just from that flower that we were talking about earlier.
Smells like him.
Yeah. And so they kind of pop up right behind her, and then she takes something out of her hair.
I think it's an acorn. Somebody in the chat just mentioned acorn. It was Cosmic, one of the mystics, grabs Nori's acorn, from her hair.
Yeah, and so I think that was like a spell component, and that's how she managed to set the village on fire, or the caravan. Largo kind of stands up for his daughter there and threatens him. This was the first time that it's really been brought home to me that these are hobbits, actually, because of the size difference. You know, we've seen them with the stranger, but he's such a weird character that I've just sort of gotten used to the fact that he's a giant, and they keep calling him a giant. But it was kind of, it brought home how powerless they are and how the fact that they are just hobbits, essentially, this scene.
But like, I love that and he'll speak about it rather specifically later in this episode, but just how I've got your back he is with his daughter.
Yeah.
You know, he runs, you harm one hair on her foot and I'll bring the lot of you. And I'm like, you got guts, my man. You got guts at least.
Well, his heart is definitely very much firmly in the right place. And yeah, I do like that speech of his later on. Nikki and I met this actress, by the way. She's really nice. She's really nice. As creepy as she is in this show, she was absolutely lovely on the red carpet and so down to earth as well. So yeah, shout out. Bridie Sasson, I think. Hopefully she gets some lines at some point. Here she is putting out the fire. And this scene we saw in one of the trailers, and it's nice to get the context on that because it was very bizarre in the trailer. It's still bizarre, but high level magic going on.
Yeah.
Distraught Harfoots. This scene is
the
setting
second
up.
death freak out, or the second death fake out.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, this is.
I guess not quite yet, but yeah, Barrick needing to be freed because only listen to Isildur. Horses famously only pay attention to people that shovel their crap.
Yeah. You're the Texan, so you can tell me about horses. I don't know.
Right. I am a Texan, so I know all about horses. Right. I used to ride a horse to school every day.
That's how it works. Yeah. This is setting up another Peter Jackson reference. I'm sure of it. The horse is going to rescue Isildur. It's probably going to wake him from the wreckage, and then he's going to ride it to the Pelargir, to the Southlanders.
And even with the one like right before the Battle of Helm's Deep, is it where not just with oh God, our Aragorn returning with the horse, but also the scene later where he's seen too much and they let the horse go free. Is that, or is that anyway?
No, that's the same horse. That's the same horse. It's Brago, I think the horse's name is in the film.
Right. But it's sort of like backwards because they're going to let the horse go first and then they'll come back with Isildur.
No, that's the same as in the film because the horse originally was Theoden's son's horse. So you remember Theoden's son dies while he's still possessed by Saruman in the movie.
Okay.
That was his son's horse, and so that's why they let it go. I think that's how it works. Yeah, it's different to the book, so it's hard for me to remember, but I'm pretty sure they let it go, and then and because it's from the Golden Hall of Meduseld, like from oh my God, the name's gone from Edoras. They're at Edoras when they let the horse go, and then on the march to Helm's Deep, the horse catches up with them and rescues Aragorn then in the film. Anyway, we should move on. Here he is trying to do.
I'm running out of gas, my man.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, if you want to go and just leave it the rest to me, then I'll finish up here if you like.
Let's see what we can.
I want to see if I can take some questions from the chat because I am also out of gas, but I do also want to finish this episode at least. I'll skip through this stuff though.
Yeah. Theo running off to find his mother, and this is the second death fake out that I was talking about.
Right.
I'm not a fan of it in the storytelling. Not a fan of either time they did it here. Very glad that both Bronwyn and Arondir are alive. I like both of those characters quite a bit.
I'm starting to like them more. Yeah, definitely. It's been one of the stronger plot lines, and I'm definitely starting to like this whole group as a family unit. Having said that, I don't think we'll see very much of them in the next episode, and I think they might be sort of slightly sidelined by new characters in season 2.
I mean, their story might even be at an end, but you know what? Happy ending for the interracial couple. I'm here for it.
I don't know that we're definitely done with them for good, but it's. I think that's unlikely, but I think they might be slightly sidelined for a while, and then we'll come back to them. Be my guess. But yeah, this is the scene with Miriel and Galadriel. We've already kind of talked about this a bit, so I think I'll speed through this. Miriel is, she's very determined to come back, and you know she will do. And she has to, because they have to take Sauron prisoner later on and then take him back to Numenor, because hopefully that's going to happen. Galadriel is taking a little bit of responsibility on here, and she's showing some sympathy and some empathy here. What is really interesting is Elendil's attitude to the whole situation. I mean, he's absolutely broken, but he's also, I think he is slightly blaming Galadriel, but he's also another character who's experiencing stages of grief. So I think we probably know that he will come back around at some point, especially when he realizes that his son's really alive.
Except that his son is not alive, and his Halbrand is going to take the name Isildur in honor of him.
Mm-hmm. I really rather hope that doesn't happen, but that's certainly a theory.
Earlier in the stream, that's canon now.
Mm.
All right, sorry. I love. What's his name?
Who's that?
Papa Brandyfoot. What's his name?
Largo or Largo or.
It's Largo. Right. Yeah. This is my dude. Also, like as much as the story can drag with the Harfoots, the characters are so much fun that I don't mind as much. His speech about is that all that we've got left is weeping, and I really like it. I really do. I'm getting in trouble with your chatters over suggesting that Halbrand is going to take the name Isildur. I'm sorry, Kelly.
We should probably talk about Halbrand a little more, actually, because we haven't really talked about him at all. And he didn't have the biggest role
in this episode. Only at the very end.
No, this was actually, it was the other moment that I really disliked quite a bit. Actually, we didn't get to him yet.
No, we didn't.
We didn't talk about him. Yeah.
They're going to
we get the quick scene on. We get the quick scene on the boat, and then we get Elrond there, and this is when she gets the news.
The fresh start conversation, and then this.
And then so he's up there in bed with a horrible looking gash taken out of his chest.
What we should do with him? Put him on a horse at a full gallop.
I know. I mean, regardless of whether you're a lore purist or whether you think that this show is too political, which I don't even know how people get to that conclusion, but putting all that aside and whatever else, like, it's just silly writing to have like somebody need healing so bad that you need to take them elsewhere and then load them on a horse and gallop away. Like, how's he staying on the horse? It's like, shouldn't he be bleeding all over the place? Well,
my headcanon says he looked brave for the 2 minutes it took to get out of sight. Then he's like, oh my God, can we slow down, please?
But it's just daft, isn't it? I mean, so you may not be aware of this, but the nearest elf colony is like miles and miles away. So they're a long way from. I mean, I suppose the nearest would probably be Mirkwood, would be Greenwood. You know, I mentioned Greenwood earlier on. Technically, but you wouldn't go there for specialized healing because it's quite a primitive elvish society relative to like the Númenóreans. Probably have better healing facilities than probably the Mirkwood elves.
Reporting to the High King, so I assume she's heading to meet Gil-galad.
Yeah, so if she's going to Lindon, that's hundreds of miles away. That's a long, long way.
Okay, but like get a little Athalas. It's called King's Foil. It's a weed. Stick that in there. Probably good till you get to where you're going. Linden, right?
Linden, yeah. I mean, it's literally the other end of the map from Mordor. Like, it's like the other side of the Shire, basically. It's where they, it's the location in the Lord of the Rings at the end, the Grey Havens,
right? The
Grey
Havens.
From. That's right in the middle of Linden. So that's where, if they're going to report to the High King, that's roughly where they're going.
Okay, cool.
It's baffling.
That's a long way.
It is it would take you like 6 months to get there, like on horseback, even maybe. I don't know. Maybe that's a little bit of an overestimation, but not by March. So I have no idea how he's going to stay alive. Let alone putting aside, he's galloping off like that. It just, it was so baffling.
Except he's actually Sauron, so like it's fine.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, we should probably talk about that, because it does feel as though they're just trying to get him to that location for plot reasons, and so of course that is going to support people who definitely think that Halbrand is Sauron, which is. It's the most popular theory about Sauron by far.
Mm-hmm. it's not a slam dunk, but gosh,
Mm-mm.
like we really are meant to think that. I think they're not even being subtle necessarily.
No, it's so it's such an obvious conclusion to reach that I almost think it's going to be a bait and switch, and that's the only thing that's keeping me from.
That's plausible.
I don't know which outcome is worse from my point of view, because I don't really want him to be Sauron, because I don't know whether that will make the greatest deal of sense. He saved Galadriel's life. We've built up this backstory for him that might be complete nonsense, and it might be made up, which feels like an investment in a storyline that's just a smoke and mirrors for them to just go, aha, we got you. Versus, him not being Sauron, and yet they've dropped all these deliberate clues. Feels dishonest. So I'm not sure I like where this is going in either way at this point. But I don't know. We'll find out, and we'll see.
Yeah, I guess we will.
Anyway, you want to go, so I think.
Yeah, what's left? What's left to talk about?
Almost nothing, really.
Okay,
we get this scene, which we've already talked about.
Red flags from these.
Definite red flags.
The leaf
the
and
Balrog.
the Balrog we talked about somewhat. Like, I will say, it looks magnificent.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? One thing I noticed here is that this was a slightly longer cut of this Balrog glimpse than we got in the trailer previously. And so you see his wings part at the beginning, which was a question that was on a lot of Tolkien fans' lips, was would he have wings? Because this is a controversy in the movies.
That he didn't have wings?
Well, it doesn't make the most sense for a Balrog to have wings, like literal wings. There's a kind of simile in the book where it's talked about the shadow around him resembles wings, like like wings, but it doesn't say in the book that he has wings. In the Silmarillion, they're not really described at all, other than as monstrous spirits of fire. And so whether or not they have wings is down to your own personal interpretation. But there would be a lot of times where wings would have come in useful if they were actually used to fly. There's a lot of Balrogs that die from falling down chasms in the Legendarium. So if they had wings that were functional, you would think that they would use them.
Well, they are demons of fire and shadow, right? Fire, notoriously bright. I feel like having a sort of cloak that you can hide yourself in would be useful, even if they're not fully functional wings. Which is how they felt like, what it felt like it was doing in this episode. It's sort of like the darkness unfolded from around it. Yeah, it felt like wings, but it could just be a darkness that it can wrap around itself that looks like wings. Yeah.
And that's a reasonable hypothesis, I think, based on actually what's in the text and how it's described in the Bridge of Khazad-dum chapter. So yeah, I just thought it was worth noting. But yeah, we have already talked about this. So unless anybody's got any questions in the chat about this, we'll probably move on quickly. Our only Adar scene of the episode, he's back with the orcs, and Waldreg is there, and he's
I hate this guy so hard.
Oh yeah, he's one of the worst characters in this. You mean Waldreg, right?
Not Adar. Adar is very cool and interesting.
Yeah, Waldreg just seems like just the worst, really, doesn't he? Like, there's really no redeeming qualities to this dude.
Yeah, and it's like, you see what happened, and like, this is our land. You don't need to fear the sun now. And this random human is like, yeah, they're gonna let me live here too. And how do you not realize that you are dead at the first time you're an inconvenience?
Also, what role is he gonna have in like orc society?
Right.
What does he expect that he's? Because he was an innkeeper before or something.
Is he gonna a barkeep?
Yeah. What is he gonna do now?
Sycophant number 2.
Interesting facial expressions from Adar here. I don't know how to read him at this point in the story.
And the Adar chant with a sort of like Mordor title card that came up.
This was the very last shot in the episode.
Hey, I made it all the way to the end.
Yep. I didn't love this because it was just like the Southland card, and then it switches to Mordor.
Wait a minute. This is Mordor now?
Oh my god.
How could I not see that?
Because that was so subtle until now. Yeah, it was a bit.
Kelly Reed's got a good question. Do we think Anatar will make an appearance for sure in episode 8?
Yeah, we had sort of had this question at the beginning. I think that we will get a Sauron reveal next episode because they've been teasing it in their marketing for the last week. Yesterday on Twitter, for those of you who are not on Twitter, you might not know, but the hashtags on Twitter very often have like a special emoji that Twitter assigns to different franchises and movies and shows and whatever. So we got one for Sauron last week. And their marketing has been teasing Sauron and evil is finally revealed. But they've been kind of teasing this one and next week's episode as like one kind of double episode finale in a sense. So the marketing has been a bit confusing at the best of times for like the last year, actually, honestly. But I think that it is suggestive of we'll get a Sauron reveal. Whether he'll be Anatar as described in the Silmarillion is another question, because I don't know whether they have the rights to tell the storyline in the Silmarillion from of the Rings of Power and the Third Age chapter in the Silmarillion directly. So I don't know whether they have the rights to the name Anatar. I think either we'll get a Halbrand reveal of some sort, and it will be shown only to the audience and not to the characters, or we'll see Anatar in the very last scene with Kelleborn, and he's talking about their plans.
Yeah, Galadriel is going to rock up with Halbrand. And Kelleborn is like, have you met my new friend? This guy, like, he gives the best gifts. One might say he is like the Lord of gift giving, or just, we'll shorten it to Lord of Gifts, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's how it's going to end.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm hoping for, really, because I still don't really want Halbrand to be Sauron, but I am just frustrated with how many hints there've been that he is, and that it would make some kind of internal sense for him to be Sauron, other than all the logical holes that you can pick in it based on the fact that he doesn't, he's been saving people's lives, he's been trying to do good deeds, he's been to all intents and purposes appearing as though he's trying to save his people in the Southlands in these last 3 episodes. But I do think that we will get some kind of reveal on Sauron and his whereabouts in the next episode, but whether or not it'll be Anatar is anybody's guess.
Yeah, I don't think it's a slam dunk that Halbrand is Sauron, but it's probably the safe money bet, but it's not 100%, I would say. But yeah, I agree. Like, I think we almost have to know at least more about Sauron before the end.
Yeah. I'm going to struggle to come back for season 2 if we don't get something about Sauron, honestly. I mean, obviously I'll watch because it's Tolkien content and I probably will cover it in some sense, but I'm just going to be very frustrated if we don't get more answers in the next episode, personally. And that's not to say that I don't enjoy parts of this show. And the part of my frustration with this show in general, and this is a more general point than this episode necessarily, but is all of the mystery box style storytelling, because I don't, as a content creator, I mean this even more as a viewer, because I don't particularly enjoy making theories and theorizing. That's not really what I do. I'm not that comfortable with it. I would rather be talking about themes and that kind of thing than talking about mysteries. And Tolkien didn't feel the need to tell stories in that way. particularly.
Yeah, that's the Game of Thrones effect to some degree.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, it's also, the lineage of these writers, these showrunners, is that they've come from like the J.J. Abrams school of storytelling a little bit. So it's in keeping with, their mentors and properties that they've worked on in the past behind the scenes, I think.
There's a bit of a mixed metaphor in the chat. Cosmic says they're coming back for season 2 for Numenor on its own. Everything else is gravy / cherries on top. Gravy and cherries.
I like both of those things individually, but
yes, like
not in the same dish.
We got to talk. Gravy and cherries. No.
Yeah. So unless there's any more questions from the chat, any kind of last minute theories or questions or concerns or anything you'd like to say about the episode, I think we'll probably wrap things up. Thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on. It's been a pleasure. It's always great talking to you about any particular topic. And it's really nice to have you on the channel, actually, finally.
And it's great to finally to finally be in a position where I can contribute. A lot of your stuff is so specific. I was recently described as a generalist nerd, not a specialist. I take a little bit from everything. I'm watching 5 different TV shows right now, Star Wars and Marvel and this and House of the Dragon, and but I really do appreciate you having me on. You know what? I had such a good time. Why don't you come on my channel next week to talk about the show as a whole after the finale?
Yeah, I should be available. I probably have to ditch my D&D game, sadly, but this is the end of the show, so I can do that. I think probably. So yeah, I accept. I will be on for your wrap up as well as, which will be the day after mine. Next week, I will have James Tauber of the Digital Tolkien Project on again, who some of you will remember I did the trailers with. And he's been co-hosting on the Prancing Pony podcast, which is the biggest podcast about Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. So he's been working with them during the show's run, but he has promised to come back on for that. So there'll be something to look forward to, because he and I always have really great conversations about Tolkien, and he is so knowledgeable as well. So I'm sure he'll have a lot to say about this. Thank you, everybody, for watching as well. It's always good to do these streams and to get some more thoughts and see what the viewing public are saying as well in real time, and be able to interact with all of you. So really do appreciate everybody coming out. I will be back next week with another lore video. Hopefully next week. I always promise things, but it'll come out when it comes out, because that's always the rule with my lore videos.
That's how it actually works.
Yeah. But I am working on a video on Gil-galad, which is written and recorded at least, so I'm just editing now, basically. Yeah, we'll get the true story on him from the books, and I won't really probably mention the TV show at all, really. So I'll probably use some of their visuals, but I will just be focusing on how he is represented in the Legendarium.
Nice.
And so yeah, we'll get the full story on him at some point. But yeah, that's it from me. Any last words?
Nope.
All right.
mean, the road goes ever on and on. So I will see you when next our paths cross.
All right. Okay, so we're done for now. Thank you to the mods as well. Yeah. Jolie's reminded me. I always forget to thank the mods.
We share a couple of mods in common.
Yeah, a lot of common friends. So yeah, thank you to you guys as well. Yeah, I really do appreciate that. And yeah, we'll close it off there. Bye, everybody.
Bye.